I check.
So, Mr. Chairman, we're live now at 7 o'clock. You can
Thank you, Bob. Hello, this is Paul Attin. I'm the chair of the Warren Zoning Board. Welcome to the October 21st, 2020 meeting. We're also live on Zoom and YouTube. So Bob really will be helping us monitor that discussion if you are looking on from outside of the chamber room. First, I'd like to do a roll call. To my right is Chuck Thibodeau. I'm Paul Attin, Vice Chair. To my left is Jason Lindstrom. Then there's Jason Raynone. And then we have Vice Chair Andrew Ellis. And as an alternate, we have Jamie Sylvia. So we do, and I think Barrett Holding might be dialed in via Zoom. Is that correct, Bob? Can you confirm?
Yes, I'm here.
He is back here.
You mean in the building?
No, he is.
Oh, okay. Okay, very good. So we do have a quorum. Thank you. First order of business is the approval of minutes from September 16th, 2020. Do I see?
This is Jason Raynone. I'll move approval of the minutes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? So the minutes have been approved. Thank you. The first order of business is an old application that's been continued since September 16th, and that's application 20-35. But before we get to that, are there any continuances that we can inform the public?
Sure. So application 20-45, R. Benson Smith and Janet Johnson Smith. There is a request that actually continue to the November meeting, and that would require a motion to continue that.
Okay, thank you. Would someone like to make a motion to continue that meeting? That application?
I'll move that we continue the application 2045 as requested to the November meeting. This is Jason Raynone. I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So the application 2045 will be continued.
And then also, Mr. Chair, with respect to the Warren Zoning Board of Appeals agenda, application 20-02A, Ronald Darius, applicant, and Brenda Darius, 15-17 Birchswamp Road plat, map 22, lot 60, request for an appeal under section 3274 and overturn the July 23rd, 2020 decision of the Department of Building and Zoning. There's a request that matter be continued to the November meeting.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to continue that application?
I'll move that we, as the vice chair, I'll move that we continue application number 20-02A as requested in November. Okay.
This is Mr. Raynone. I'll second.
This is the chair. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So the motion carries to continue that application number 20-02A.
All other matters are going forward today.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. So the first then application before us is, again, as I mentioned, continued from September. It's application number 20-35, Wolf Holdings LLC, owner and Waterfront Investments LLC. So before I read the application in, I am going to have to recuse myself as I did last time, as I reside within the 200-foot abutters notification. And Mr. Vice Chair Ellis will be conducting this portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we'll be moving forward this application, which is the property, the wharf located at 215 Water Street, Plat 4, lots 1 and 3. Request for a special use permit under 3251 of the zoning ordinance to modify the special use granted by the zoning board on June 19th, 2019, to allow for amplified music in the waterfront zoning district. Could the applicant, council, et cetera, please come forward? And please identify yourself by name and address, please, stenographer.
I'm Peter Cabral. I reside at 700 Shore Drive in Fall River, Mass. I'm the co-owner.
And I'm Marissa Ferris. I also reside at 700 Shore Ave in Fall River.
Okay, so Mr. Cabral, if you want to give us a general overview to refresh everyone's memory as to what it is you'd like to do on the upper level deck of the restaurant and why you believe it's appropriate to modify the conditions that were approved on the original application. And the board will have some discussion with you about that. We'll have participation by the audience, members of the public, if anyone wishes to speak. Then we'll bring it back for a final discussion with you and see where that leads us in terms of a motion.
Okay. Well, thank you all, Doug, for letting us hear this matter. We also thank the neighbors that's present here and on Zoom. So brief history. We acquired the property in May of 2018. When we acquired the property, we bought it for about $1.7 million. When we got into it, we knew we needed a substantial amount of renovations. We put another $2 million into renovations and rehab. And that includes the upper deck as well. By the time we applied for a special use permit, we figured that we wouldn't need amplified music with entertainment. So before we opened up the rooftop, our manager scheduled and had bands working Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to perform on the rooftop.
Throughout this past summer. So from May to August, we had every weekend scheduled.
Yeah. So when we opened up the rooftop, we had a performer, the same performer that was performing during the site visits, plays music. Within 10 feet, you couldn't hear anything. So at that time, we said to ourselves, we need amplified music.
And we went ahead and canceled all of the rest of the bands for the remainder of the summer. So we basically couldn't have anybody come and play because it was absolutely pointless. You couldn't hear anything from 10 feet away.
So with that, then all of a sudden what transpired is COVID happened, obviously. And now you see more and more customers willing to eat. They want to be outside. And to that point, Gina Raimondo has made her Take It Out initiative, which basically she said it's a priority for municipalities to assist the hospitality industry in providing opportunities for extending the outdoor season. So our goal here is to continue to be a good neighbor, and we believe we are. We appreciate some of the neighbors and nearby residents that are fearful about allowing amplified music. Their quality of life is going to be impacted, and that since that we are requesting is similar to what we already have on the lower level. In order to fully understand the potential impacts of additional amplified music, at your suggestion in the last zoning meeting we had in Zoom was to retain and get a sound study done, in which we did. His report, which we previously provided to you, allows us to establish a baseline as to what maximum decibel levels could be, which would be lower than what is allowed in Warren's ordinance as well as Barrington's. If our application is approved, we would remove the downstairs existing lower deck speakers that is facing the Johnson property. Musicians will be limited to 2 musicians on a maximum on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and holidays. Music will cut off with the current restriction now 8 p.m. during the weekday, 9 p.m. on the weekends. We will monitor with a decibel meter throughout the day periodically to ensure that the decibel readings are where it needs to be. We will also, with any outside entertainment, it will be plugged into our amplifier that will be at the decimals, which is what we heard during the site visit, which was about 55. We've had, it seems like a large upside this year, I think, with COVID. Once when you announced the rooftop deck, what we noticed was that we had a tremendous amount of people coming in not just from Warren. They were coming as far as Easton, North Compton, Narragansett, and what drove me, I think, was loud on the rooftop. You know, with that, it helps us, it helps the community, it helps the restaurants. Someone tell me, Peter, I had no idea there's a cluster of restaurants here. So I think it's a positive. Again, you know, we're trying to do, I mean, we understand the neighbor's concern. There's no question about that. And that's why I think at 8 p.m. we'll cover up. At 9 p.m. we'll measure decibel levels throughout the day. If the neighbors have a machine and it's louder, we can communicate, which we're going to do our best to do, and we think we can. I mean, with this music, we're not looking to bring in big bands. We want our demographics to stay the same. We believe a two soloist is very calm and soothing. It's nothing crazy. You know, as you can see, I mean, we're a good neighbor. If you think about it, we close our bar at 10 o'clock. Restaurants close by 10 to 11 o'clock. We're closed. We did barely stay open until midnight, but we don't want to be that last place where they come in, have a drink, and the last place to close. So we've done our best to try to simplify and make these with our neighbors.
I'm sorry, this is the acting sheriff. Can you just go back and clarify? You said you're going to cut off the music at 9 p.m.?
8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and 9 p.m. Friday, Saturday.
All right, so if we can go back for a moment. What did you say about Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? What is happening on
We
those?
will only have live entertainment, a maximum of 2 people performing.
So you're not having live entertainment on the other day?
Correct.
No, we will just be running with the speakers.
Through the speakers that are currently installed above the bar area?
Yes,
And you're proposing to remove the speakers that are on the lower level facing the Johnson property?
Correct.
And so what time would the music commence on the speakers on the upper level during the day?
so the rooftop now, we'll probably stay the same Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 2 o'clock, Fridays, noon, Sundays, and Saturday, noon. So I'd say, let's make it simple, noon every day.
So at noon each day, there would be music through the speakers.
Yes.
And Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you would have live music. And when would the live music start?
They would start probably around 4 o'clock,
So that would be 4 to
4 to 8.
4 to
4 to 8. 4 to 8. They typically have 4 out, 4 to 8.
4 to 8 live music. And that's only Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Correct. Correct.
And then the other 4 days, they're open?
Yes.
7 days?
7 days.
So the other 4 days of the week, you would have pre-recorded music playing through the speakers from noon until 8 p.m.
Yes,
Is that correct?
that's correct. I mean, currently now, so the downstairs speakers are playing, we turn them on at 11, roughly 11:15, 11:30, and they play until we close the restaurant. I mean, we typically be outside down by 9 o'clock. So what we did was on this site visit, we did, some of you folks were there. We tested decimals from one where we were standing, the parking lot, the room, to the Johnson's rooftop deck. When we played with the radio, we first ran downstairs, lower deck currently. We also played simultaneously with rooftop and the rooftop solo. We had our radio set at 50% max capacity with downstairs speakers, and that was giving us a decimal reading of somewhere between 50 to 58 over on the deck of the Johnson property. The rooftop deck, we ran it at about 60%, and that gave us roughly just about the same, not a little lower decimal reading on the rooftop. We played with the Johnson property. We played both together. Obviously, it was about the same. So I think, what I'm saying is exactly, it's in the rooftop, it's being contained to the rooftop. So we believe for granted this license, we'll remove the downstairs speakers, which is creating more of a sound in the Johnson property, and keep the ones that's at the top.
And that's, correct me if I'm wrong, is that 4 speakers that currently?
Correct, 4 speakers.
In the bar, so those would be the only 4 speakers on the.
Yes.
Do you have anything else before we go to questions from the board?
No, sir.
Let's start with Mr. Thibodeau at the end here.
The only question I had, and this was more of a general sound thing, I noticed when I was up there on the site visit, everything's either wood or stone. Is there anything we could do to take the edge off? There's nothing that absorbs sound out there, like plants. Everything's either wood or stone. Everything's wood, I think.
We get the fabric we have on the couches, or the couches weren't, they weren't
You
set
see what
up.
I'm getting at? Is there anything we could do to just kind of, I'm talking about taking the edge off.
Yeah,
Even if it's just plants or
Yeah.
something, just,
yeah, we can add more green, which we probably will anyway.
Yeah, this year we kind of had to just skimp on a lot of things because of COVID, so we had to space everything out, and we didn't get the same furniture we were gonna get and everything, so it wasn't kind of done the way we wanted.
right, and I don't think we're building the cone of silence up there. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, anything that's soft that's going to absorb something is just going to take a little edge off of all the noise, the
Mhm.
talking, the music. It just might help take the rough edges off.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah, we're looking to create a small little barrier on the bottom perimeter, just.
Anything that's going to absorb. I guess plantings would do it, or anything. I just know when you have wood,
Yeah, it bounces.
and in the ocean, the water isn't helping either. Because
Right,
you can hear everything on the water. So
yes,
that's my
thank you.
Anyways, let's clarify, when we were there for the demonstration, the live music was playing only through the amp that the performer had with them. Is that correct? It wasn't going through the 4 speakers.
Right, that's correct.
So when the live music is occurring, the 4 speakers over the bar would not be used.
Correct.
Okay, and do we also determine at the site visit that the location where we saw the performer set up with his equipment, that was the designated location where that setup would always be located?
Yes.
So, Mr. Neisman?
Thank you. The only real question I have is, and I asked this to, I believe it was Attorney Berlanti when he was here, was fundamentally what has changed from when you were granted the initial special use permits, I believe back in 2018, allowing the rooftop deck bar, where it was specifically said no amplified music. What has changed from that point to now that you're seeking a modification of that permit?
Well, one of the reasons would be because we didn't realize that if we just had an acoustic person come with no amplified speakers, we didn't realize that you couldn't hear them. We thought you'd be able to hear them on the roof. But as we had that first entertainer come, we couldn't hear a thing. I mean, we canceled them after 20 minutes of playing. So that's why now we're looking back and saying, well, we're not going to be able to have any music if we can't have it to be amplified, because we can't have somebody come and play without amplified music.
Okay, and I guess to kind of follow up with that is, you're still able to operate the rooftop deck bar, is it whether a bar, restaurant, however you guys do that, you're still able to operate that without some sort of musical
Correct.
additive, correct?
Right. Yes.
Okay. So has there been any sort of, business change from, you're not able to make as much money?
Well, we don't know because we weren't open last year, so this is the first year, so we have nothing to compare it to. But I will say that we have had people, you're sitting there and it's kind of, in the beginning when it's not very busy, it's just no music. Like, it's just kind of weird. I've never really been in a restaurant that doesn't, or outside that doesn't have background music. It's kind of weird to just sit there with silence.
If I may, so I know some attention that brought up this condition that is one put on the amplified music. I was at a hearing, and council hearing, and I think that this board put it on as a sitting on because the applicant wasn't ready to address the issue whether or not to be at a location. And on in recent years, we had long votes and there was obviously noise consideration there. So certainly, I would make that recommendation if the applicant presents some information, just to make sure that we're covered. If the applicant does want to, we have to come back with a separate application for amend. So at times we do that as a safeguard, just to protect the town until the applicant's ready to come back and present a follow plan to have amplified use.
I mean, I just would just like to add to Mr. Nystrom's comment as to what happened, COVID-19. Every community in the state of Rhode Island has seen a significant decrease in the amount of meals tax that they've been able to receive as a result of COVID-19. Many communities are in double-digit negative numbers. So as we negotiate whatever the new normal is, as Mr. Cabral said, we've received $75,000 from the state to encourage people to extend their outdoor season. Take it outside is the initiative. That is the title. So, businesses, we are perilously on the precipice of losing businesses, particularly in the food industry and hospitality industry, not just in Warren, but every community in the state, as a result of the COVID-19. So, I don't want to disregard the concerns of abutters, but at the same time, I want to be cognizant of the fact that, businesses create to the economic development and vibrancy of the community. And we have been encouraged by the Vermont administration to do everything we can do to enhance what that operation is. So, you could conditionally approve something tonight and ask that, as their entertainment license comes up for review for the town council later this year, that this be reviewed. But I don't know what the new normal looks like, but I don't think it looks like the old normal.
And I appreciate the concerns. And again, I think we all like to hope that COVID's going to go away at some point. And I think that's a balancing act. We have to weigh the rights of the abutters who own property and the rights of operating the business next to it. And that's part of the balancing act I have to do. So I won't ask any other follow-ups. Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is the acting chair. And follow up on Mr. Rulli's comments. Something that we have done before with conditions is to put a sunset clause on a particular condition. There's something is approved, it's approved for a certain length of time, a certain number of months, or until a certain date, so they can trial it out, see how it goes, and then they can come back again, and we can reevaluate to see if what's been approved is working or if it needs further tweaks. So that might be something we'll be discussing when it comes time for motion. Mr. Reno?
One quick question. In your initial statement, did I hear you correctly that you are planning on purchasing a decibel meter of some kind?
Yes.
Yep. So if there were to be a nuisance complaint that came in, it would be a very easy thing to say, take that out of the closet, measure it, and make sure nothing was changed.
Yes. And again,
And the option for the Warren Police to come and do, presently, sound enforcement is done by the Warren Police. Our officers have decibel meters, and that presently that's how we address that. So, in addition to anything that the proprietors are doing on site, we would have the Warren Police come and do as well.
Thank you, Mr. Rowley. Anything else, Mr. Nystrom? I'm sorry, Mr. Ringo.
I don't, Mr. Vice Chair. Thanks for asking.
I'm looking through the plexiglass.
And Mr. Ellis, I just want to remind you that Mr. Holby is participating via Zoom. If you wanted to extend an opportunity for him to comment.
I will be. I'm going to go through the room first, and I was going to ask Mr. Sylvia next, and I was going to come to Mr. Holby.
Well, Mr. Sylvia is here as the alternate.
But he can comment.
Recused.
You've got, with Mr. Holby, you have.
Oh, Mr. Holt, okay, I'm sorry.
So Mr. Sylvia is not.
He's not voting, but he can participate in the hearing and ask any questions that you may have. Do you have any questions, Mr.
My one question was the sunset clause, but you already addressed that.
Thank you.
In addition to that, again, I've said this in the past. on a yearly basis, they got to go to water council. So there's issues that arise. Certainly, there's no layer of protection if this board has any reservation at all in regards to this permit. On a yearly basis, I mean, they keep police there, and complaints documented. You send guys out there, their meetings, etc. So just know that on a yearly basis that the law will have to go to the council for their entertainment licensing. There's issues of water there. So that's another safeguard. Any concerns?
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. And now, Mr. Holby.
Mr. Holby, can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes. Can you hear me?
Mr. Holby. Yes. So everything is working technologically tonight. Mr. Holby, go ahead.
I was just, I had a question for the applicant, and he said something about limiting it to 55 decibels. That's with all the sound, is my understanding. And also, it's very hard for me to hear everybody, so I might be repeating myself, but the 4 speakers that were on the lower level, are those you said those are being removed, or there's going to be 4 speakers on the whole deck, on the east side of the deck and the west side of the deck and the north side of the deck? Is it just going to be a total of 4, and which way are those?
Mr. Holby, I can answer that. So what the applicant had suggested is if their request for amplification on the rooftop deck was approved, the existing approved 4 speakers that face to the south that are on the lower deck presently would be removed. I think, Bob, I think it's 6 on the lower deck. Is that correct?
God, I
Whatever the number of speakers.
Yeah, whatever those are.
Face the
Well, where would the speakers be then?
What's that?
Where would the speakers, the 4 speakers be? Would they
Be nowhere. They should be removed.
Oh, they'll be removed. Okay, so they are removed. Well, I guess.
On the lower deck.
We're keeping the 4 speakers, or what is proposed, to keep the 4 speakers already installed above the bar on the roof deck.
Yes.
So what Mr. Ellis just said, just to be clear, the speakers that face the Johnston property on the lower deck would be removed. The existing speakers that had been installed erroneously on the rooftop deck would remain, but the lower decks, they would not be replaced anywhere else.
Okay. So I guess we'll find out. I was just wondering what the vice chair and other members of the board thought about limiting the noise level to 55 decibels versus 52, or what people think about that. I just,
I would just remind you, Ms. Holby, that the town's ordinance is 75. And there were suggestions that we adopt the Barrington ordinance, which was in the 60s. And what the applicant is suggesting is something less than that.
got it. Okay.
I would, this is, share again. So if we're, the 55 decibels you mentioned was within the range of what we saw on the sound meter when we were doing the site visit, or measuring the different levels of the upstairs and downstairs speakers and the performer. The 55 decibels that you're proposing to limit it to, how would that, is that a total decibel level? Because if the restaurant was busy, there's the sound of the diners and their conversations plus the music, or are you suggesting the 55 only applies to music? And if so, I don't know how you would measure that independently of other sounds of people's conversations and the noises of the restaurant.
Mr. Vice Chair, if I may, I think that the difficulty is exactly what you just stated. I would recommend keeping the town ordinance out of that 75. Although he's proposed 55, 60, I think that how we're running into some issues. You stop crying, other noise. It's going to be very difficult to figure out the human noise versus amplified, and that's the ordinance exempts human noise. So it's going to be very difficult. I think I would recommend just keeping the 75 as the one to do this, if that's what the board wants to do.
No, we can certainly discuss what our feelings are on that. But can you just respond?
Yes,
When
well,
you were talking about the 55, what did you have?
yeah, so the 55 is what we heard over at the site visit. So what we would do is obviously, we would measure the sound before we had any music. We'd add the music, and we would want to engage that music on our meter to 55 decibels. If it went to 60, hopefully it does not. But the only fact is too, we got to keep in mind too, is with a marina next door, when you leave at 10 o'clock meeting, it's loud. There's guys fishing too. They've got their radio on their boats. So we will do whatever we can to prevent our side of creating. I think if people are talking and the rooftop, is full, I think between the music being at the level we're at with the sound, I think it would balance off.
I just want to remind the board, your consideration is limited to amplified music, not conversations that might be higher than that, because that's already been approved. That's no different than a motorcycle with straight pipes going down. It's no different than geese honking by, as the Johnsons have suggested. The only consideration for you is what the measurement of the amplified music could be.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Rule. And I think we're trying to determine how that music could be measured independently of other noises. When we had the site visit, the bar was basically unoccupied. There was no one up there dining. There might have been one or two people.
But other ambient noise doesn't factor into it.
No,
It's the measured amplified music.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Rule. I think what we're trying to do is determine how would the music be measured independently if there's going to be a certain limit for the music apart from conversation.
I think that's what the applicant has suggested, is if it's performers, that they are able to control that through the speaker system, that there are limits on that. And with respect to any other music that they have, and I understand what you're saying in terms of if it's house music and people that are talking, then it potentially could be louder, but I think that the premise is that the only reason it's louder is because people are talking. And
I think my concern is, as you mentioned earlier, the enforcement is the responsibility of the police. So if there is a noise complaint, the police can go and determine if the music only is at the appropriate level set by this board.
I don't know that we've ever had a situation where the police have issued a noise complaint because people are talking loud.
But the difficulty, sorry, this is Mr. Reno. The difficulty is in the event that there were a noise complaint, the police would be called and they would take a noise measurement. You're not necessarily going to vacate the restaurant and the roof deck, but all of the patrons to take that noise.
I understand, but I don't think it suggests that amplified music set at 55 decibels and that you have another 20 decibels of range for human conversation. That would be people screaming at a Super Bowl party. Realistically, that would be people yelling. And I think that the police would be in a position to actually ascertain that that's one or two individuals that are creating the situation. To have human conversation at 75 decibels is pretty substantial.
And I think this is the Chair. I think the question that this board is considering is the nuisance or hazard qualification of standards that are, what does this board determine to be a nuisance, whether it is something above 75 decibels, maybe that's not a nuisance. Could something at 55 or 30 be a nuisance? It could. It all depends, as I think we explored when we were there on site visit, that a certain sound level just pegged to a decibel reading does not in and of itself classify something as whether the noise is a nuisance or not. I think that's what we're trying to determine here this evening. All right, so Mr. Holby, do you have anything else?
No, I don't. I don't have anything else. I'm ready to listen to the audience.
Mr. Vice Chair, if I may. So if there is a complaint, please get called, involve the audience, people to find the individual. If there's a reading in excess of 75 And obviously, they'll use a couple times to make sure that we have solid information. They'll be cited, they'll be brought to court. They're gonna have to explain why you exceeded 75. I'm sure the police department that night, they will make their own observations, records of what they saw, what's at the property, how many people, what levels of music, how much amplification going on, et cetera. And that's something that we would have to discuss in enforcement, in house law, most likely.
Yes, and I think perhaps the concern of the board is if we were to limit the music itself to a certain level, decibel level of 55 or some number that we come up with, I just don't know how that would be possible for the police to determine if they went and had a complaint, and let's say the reading was at 80, how would we know if the music was at 65 and the rest of the conversation was adding another 15, or the music was only at 40? I don't know how you would determine if the music was in compliance if we were to put that kind of condition on it. I just don't know how that would be measured.
I think it's observations of the police officer. I mean, again, with the proper training, with the noise meter on property lines, they're going to make some observations. They're going to report exactly what they heard. They're going to get at the end, it's going to be documented. They get amplified music versus a group of people talking, 4 or 5 people talking extremely loud, etc. Whatever gets to that level, I think. And again, I have a house of law issues here in violations of the zoning. And again, if there's a violation, we're going to court. And then they're going to have to address why that 75 was shown on, and report the police report. And again, we will present if it's amplified music, then they're going to deal with it. If it's other music, other types of noise, they're going to have to prove that it was not the amplified music, etc.
But even if it wasn't amplified music, even if it was just a number of people up there talking loud, that's still subject to a noise violation if it exceeded 75 decibels. You almost have to be speaking into the decibel meter to hit 75 decibels in terms of meeting that limit. So as we're speaking here, and you're as far away as you are right now, we're not at 75 decibels. So, I mean, again, there are protections in place.
Do you have anything else, Mr. Cabral, before we go to the public comment?
What I'd like to say is, with the current speakers now at the lower level, there hasn't been one noise complaint. We've never abused it. The volume was at decibels where we didn't measure, but it was fine. So we're very cost conscious of what we play and how loud we play it. And we'll do our best. We'll do the same with the rooftop as well. But I do think if we're allowed with the rooftop, the benefit for the Johnson properties, we're removing all those speakers. Whether it be 6 speakers and the whole side is being removed. And we knew by the sound study that at 50%, it was 1 decimal downstairs. Upstairs at 60+% was the same decimal reading. So obviously it's louder upstairs in the volume, but it's being contained. And I think that would help a lot with the Johnsons if we removed all that at the lower level, if we're granted the upstairs.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to begin with a public comment of anyone who is attending by Zoom or other electronic methods. So for anyone that is participating by Zoom that would like to comment on the application that is before the committee right now, there is a raise your hand icon that you're allowed to use via Zoom, or if you turn your camera on and raise your hand, I will recognize you, and I will give folks a moment to do either or. If you don't have your camera on, I can't see you, and that is not helpful. So if there is anyone in the public that would like to comment on this, either use the raise your hand icon, or if your camera is on, raise your hand. Mr. Vice Chair, I am not seeing any of the above at this time. Okay, thank you. So let's go to people in the public who are in the room. Please raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Yes, sir, please come forward. So you two can just to the side for the time being. on one moment while we sanitize. Okay, come forward and please state your name and address so as to not refer camera like that.
My name is David Johnston. I'm the neighbor of the Roth. Thank you very much for hearing me and allowing me an opportunity to speak on this subject. I know it's a very unique situation. It's a very complicated situation. It's very difficult to come up with a solution for everybody that's going to work for everybody. I just want to make a few comments. You've had many letters on this and whatnot, but a couple of things that I would like to add is, yes, the ordinance allows 75 decibels of noise. That's very loud. Would you want to hear 75 decibels all day long at your home where you live, day in, day out? It was mentioned that they're going to play the music from May to August. I'm assuming they're going to also play September and October.
That's certainly a question, so we can certainly confirm that with the applicant, what the schedule is.
Even 65 decibels is very loud. Hearing that constantly being played all the time. Now, Mr. Cabral mentioned that they were going to stop the music, around noontime. There have been times that music has been playing 9:30 in the morning. I have audio recordings of the music 9:30 in the morning. They're not even open yet. My point is that the length of the music being played right to when they close, which they have done in the past, being exposed to that noise 11 hours a day is really very much a nuisance for the house that you live in, that you're going to end up dying in. For the rest of my life, I have to listen to that noise.
Well, Mr. Johnston, the applicant has currently proposed that the music would cease at 8 p.m. and that the pre-recorded music would commence at 12 p.m. on the days when they're not having live performers, and the live performers would be limited to 4 to 8 p.m. on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday only. So they are proposing a specific schedule for when the music would be playing.
Mr. Ellis, I just want to add that, this matter became before the town council in terms of an amendment to the sound ordinance, and the town council had made a decision that they did not
Want to at this time amend the existing sound ordinance and the limits contained therein.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Rulli.
Understood. As far as calling the police to have them come down, where are the police going to measure the sound? Are they measuring it at the rooftop deck, or are they going to measure it at my deck? Where are they going to measure it?
They need to measure it at your property line, where the requirement under the ordinance is that they measure it at wherever the complainant is requesting that it's a nuisance. So in this case, it would be at your property line, what you're hearing on your property.
I think Mr. Ellis brings up a very important point, is that all this testing that was done, there was no ambient. There was no ambient even measured from my deck. As the noise at the corner of the property line, when we measured it on my deck, it was higher. The ambient's going to be higher. How do we determine the total noise level between the music and what's the noise being generated?
The noise being generated is not the question. The ambient music is what is being questioned. Right now, if they didn't have ambient music and people were talking, and they were talking at a level that was excessive, you would still have the right to call the police and say that people are screaming or they're being very loud. I mean, that's allowed. I mean, there's no control over that.
But as we know, by the time the police there, that particular incident is gone.
That's not true. I mean,
That's the general case. That's the general case. I know.
Talking back and forth about what happens, doesn't happen. So present the rest of your concerns as to why.
So we're talking about the 6 speakers on the south side are going to be removed.
so that is the current proposal that Mr. Cabral has put forward, that he's going to remove.
The four remaining speakers on the west side and north side, do those stay also?
No, don't,
And those will be used?
excuse me, Mr. Dunn, don't ask the question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Ask the board. So it's the board's understanding, the only speakers to be removed are the 6 speakers on the south side of the building that face your property. All the other speakers presently installed would remain, and he's not planning on installing additional speakers elsewhere to make up for the 6 that have been taken down.
And the timing of the operation of those speakers will be consistent with the upper level? Noontime?
The speakers
On the lower level.
are being removed.
No, but there's still 4 remaining speakers on the lower level.
So you're talking the other speakers that don't face your property.
Correct.
We will have to clarify with the applicant the schedule that he's provided applies to those speakers as well.
Okay. Would it be possible for me to have some ability to also monitor the sound that the board and the police would consider valid, where I don't have to call the police all the time?
I can't speak to what the police would accept as valid evidence or not.
I think the applicant has suggested that if you call Mr. Cabral or the manager and express that your, whatever sound meter you're using is excessive, I think that Mr. Cabral has expressed that they would be reacting to that, not just dismiss your consideration. So short of the police coming, if you are able to timestamp that at this time, this is what I heard, and you call the wharf and Mr. Cabral or Mrs. Cabral or the manager said, yes, you're correct, they're going to adjust the sound. I think that's what Mr. Cabral had said previously. They're trying to accommodate you
And I appreciate that very much. I believe removing those 6 speakers will help tremendously.
Not 6, it's 4.
No, it's
6. It's 6. It's 6. Yes.
It's 6 speakers on the first
South side.
South side
That face your property.
Correct.
facing the Johnson property, or up for removal. He's keeping the 4 that are on the bar, that are already installed in the canopy area above the bar, and then any other speakers that currently exist on the property are staying in place as well. We're going to clarify what the hours of operation are. Do you, Mr. Johnson, do you have specific concerns about the proposed hours of operation that he's now offering?
It's a vast improvement. I think that probably would be acceptable as far as, 8 o'clock. That would be all speakers turned off at 8 o'clock.
That's my understanding. We can confirm.
And 9 o'clock for Friday, Saturday.
But he hasn't asked for that right now. He's asked for 8 p.m. on everything.
8 p.m. Okay. 8 p.m. everything would be fine.
Yeah, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
That's correct, Mr. Ellis. I think what he said is 8 o'clock during the week and 9 o'clock on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays.
But I have written down when he gets back up here, we can ask him. I've written down 4 to 8 for the live music, because he said 4 hours was sufficient. And
Right.
then 12 to 8 on the non-live music. We'll confirm that. Do you have any other specific concerns you want to address to us?
My only other specific concern would be the consistent monitoring that WAF will be able to do that would still keep within the limits that the board determines that they should be able to play at.
Okay, we can address that with the applicant.
And I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing these concerns to our attention. Is there another member of the public who wishes to comment on this application? I'm not
Chair, if I may, just put on the record, the emails, the letters that I received.
So there was a package, I will say, of emails, letters, prior to
Bob,
the hearing in September.
Mr. Rulli,
hold up,
Just Ellis, apparently there's somebody from the public that would like to
Okay,
speak.
I'm gonna.
Mr. Rulli.
Just one moment, let me just finish with these documents. The documents, all correspondence received from the public pertaining to this application, we will consider that Exhibit A as part of the record, that package of documents.
Mr. Rulli,
Just a moment.
That package of documents represents various points of view for and against the proposal that have been communicated to this board via the office of the zoning officer. Now, Mr. Rulli, I'd like to hear from the individual on Zoom if they can identify themselves.
Mr. Blank, if you could unmute yourself and stop waving as if you're having some kind of medical condition. We gave you an opportunity to speak earlier. You have to unmute yourself.
I'm Henry Blade, 80 Baker Street, Warren.
So it's Henry Blank.
Am I to speak now?
Can everyone hear Mr. Blank?
Yes,
Yes, go ahead,
if
sir.
he proceeds clearly and concisely.
So the vice chair is directing you to be concise and direct as opposed to past experience.
No, the vice chair didn't say that.
No, but
I said clear
the
and,
town has said that.
I said clear and concise so everyone in the room can hear clearly what is being stated. So please
Go
proceed.
ahead, Mr. Blank. And please don't repeat anything that you've said previously.
Am I supposed to speak now?
Yes, that would be yes. That you can speak now.
My name is Henry Blade. I am from 80 Baker Street. I live about a block over from the Warren Wharf Tavern. And I was at the meeting last time, and I've sent a couple of letters already. I'd just like to summarize all that. First of all, at the earlier meetings and since then, we've noted special use permit zoning violations that the board has been made aware of. One of them is that they have been using, Wharf Tavern has been using amplified music, playing that, which is not permitted. They did that earlier this year. They also were playing amplified music before and after their normal business hours, and that's also a zoning violation. And lastly,
Mr. Blade, the vice chair is asking you to not repeat what you've already said and not repeat what you've already included in the numerous correspondence you've submitted to the board. Is there anything new that you would like to testify to that is not already on the record or is not already been heard?
Well, Mr. Rulli, I'd like to say let's limit this to not talk about enforcement issues because the enforcement issues are a separate matter. So if there are violations or perceived violations, that's best addressed through the zoning official or the police department or what have you. But let's speak to specifically the request of newly approved amplified music at that upper level only. So let's not talk about previous violations.
saying that zoning violations are not pertinent to granting them extended use.
So your audio is poor at the moment, but I think your question is that is enforcement not part of the consideration? I will let the solicitor address that.
This is simply for an amendment to a special use permit.
I mean, there's no record of any violations at this location.
So let's speak either for or against this proposed amplified music and state what reasons you're giving for being for or against it, please.
Did you hear that, Mr. Blake?
Let me just clarify.
If you could change your microphone, we're having difficulty hearing you.
Can you not hear me?
We're barely hearing you, sir.
So how is the Zoom thing, is that just coming out of the computer or is it hooked up to the speaker?
It's hooked up to the speaker. We haven't had, I mean, previously we didn't have a problem, so I don't know what he's done.
It's on his end.
It's on Mr. Blaze end.
try to call by telephone if you'd like that.
You can try
That
that.
might improve the sound.
If you want to
Can
try
you hear
that,
me?
wait a minute, I will let you in.
Mr. Rulli?
Yes, you can call by phone if you'd like, and I will let you in.
Okay.
But just now, this is a little louder than you were previously.
Oh,
So if you want to continue, can people hear it now?
can you hear me now?
I think perhaps the phone option.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, this is like a Verizon, I guess. The phone would be a better option.
It will take me. All right.
We'll give you a few
I
minutes,
will need some time to do that. Give me 1 moment.
and we will, sir.
All right, so while he's accessing the phone, was there anyone else in the room? I don't think there was that wanted to comment.
My name's Mark Greenbaum. I'm on a telephone. I can't see anything. I live on Baker Street.
Hey, your name, sir, again?
Mark Greenbaum,
You spell your last
81
name, sir?
Baker. Greenbaum. I'm at 81 Baker Street.
Thank you. Your comments, sir?
Yeah, I just want to make something that I think a couple of suggestions. Number one, that they possibly consider putting a glass barrier where the actual musicians play, that they perhaps limit a PA system to something comparable to a Bose LL system, which is used by lots and lots of people, and that if they were going to have an amplifier, which musicians use for tone for the most part these days, that they limit it to 4 watts.
Okay, anything else you'd like to add, sir?
No, I just think a glass barrier would perhaps address, help Mr. Johnson out, who's one of the main impacted people of this whole thing.
Thank you. Is everyone able to hear Mr. Greenbaum's comments?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Glade, are you here yet?
Yes, I've connected by telephone. Is this an improvement?
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much.
Could you just repeat
I wanted to address my thoughts on the sound check or the report that was done, because a lot of everything we're talking about depends on that. And I think I expressed myself, but a few other things I just wanted to make sure everyone understands. The ambient sound level was done to over a period of time. That was done over the weekend, which is the loudest time. It's supposed to be a control. I think if it was measured at a lower over Monday through Friday or Thursday, you'd get a lot different result. It would be much lower. And it is important because the current zoning regulation says that we need to not go too high, and we need to consider the impact on the soundscape. That because of that, we're setting it very high instead of, what is the lowest soundscape, and then how much is being added to it, either by the ambient dining or the music that's being played. As far as that sound check, that was a guy playing music, and I know that I can double the volume of my music simply by playing louder. And I'm not sure that there's a way that's going to be able to control that other than the squelching system that the expert was talking about. I think something like that would be a good way to keep that noise down. This question about it being 75, I'm not sure if that should be considered at all. But I was told by the owner that they would not commit to not asking for a higher volume next year, or a larger band with more amplified instruments next year. And all that tells me that we're back at the same situation as we were at the beginning of this. What has changed? What in the future will change that would stop them from, getting even louder and louder? We talked about that, looking at the test that was done, that measured the ambient noise separately from the bar noise, or the music noise, when in fact you'd be hearing the two together. And I disagree with you, Mr. Rulli. If you had just one person right near a sound device and they were speaking loudly, that will come across as 60 to 65 decibels because it's so close. If it's farther away, yes, it will be less. But if you have multiple people speaking at 60, 65 degrees, decibels, at 50 people in a restaurant all speaking at the same time, that is going to be more sound energy and therefore louder than what you might be thinking. You don't have to really yell that loud if you have multiple people talking at normal conversation levels. None of this was determined in the study. What they did was say, look, we're certainly below 75. What I'm saying is that, I could have told you that there will be limited or practically no impact if you're looking at, going up to 75. If you're looking to go to 65, but you're not considering, 65 decibels of music because it could get louder, or the people in the restaurant that are getting louder. When they get louder, the music's going to get louder. This is a feedback loop that will increase the total amount. What I'm saying is that this has not been determined by the study that was done. That was just a sound check, including the report there. There was no effort to determine the impact of the noise on the Johnstons, for example, where they measured that noise and what they did with the ambient music. They didn't go to their place. They did not go to the effects that would be on Main Street. And similarly, there's no mention of Barrington, which has a much lower sound level and considers this kind of low-level, recognizable, rhythmic sound to be a noise hazard. Not a hazard, but a nuisance. So to finish up, hello?
Summarize, and if we ask you to summarize the conversation.
Yes, I'm summarizing now. So I put it to the zoning board and to everybody here that they are likely, or if there's a determination made tonight without further work, it's likely that they will say next year, just as they've done this year, when nothing has changed, they want to change it. They were told to have ambient level music. And I do believe that is because the planning board, and I recognize that you were there, Mr. Rulli, but I think the planning board said no amplified music because of the lack of, the ability of the current zoning regulations on noise to be able to affect this. And they simply said no amplified music. I think it would behoove the zoning board to look at and seek advice from the planning board regarding this, and the town council, and Barrington. Furthermore, with regards to mitigation, as my neighbor was saying, if they do set up something, it should be set up with a sound meter squelching device that will keep it at a certain decibel level. But as far as I can tell from the discussion tonight, that will not be done, that nobody will actually be in charge of controlling the level of sound. And I also agree with others that have said regarding mitigation. It was said earlier, no, we'll put up some plants or we'll do this or that. My understanding is that that kind of mitigation efforts need to be designed.
Mr. Blaine?
so that they're effective, so that they work. Just putting up a couple of planted pots and stuff will do nothing. It needs to be a sealed area.
Thank you. All right. So we will address those concerns. If the applicant can come back to the podium, please. All right, so, Mr. Cabral, firstly, let's be very specific about the hours at which this music is going to occur. So on Monday through Thursday, is it correct that pre-recorded music will be played from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m.?
Yes, correct.
And that will be played through the 4 speakers that are above the bar right now, plus any other speakers on the building, minus the ones you're proposing to remove to face the Johnson property.
In the downstairs, now I'd like it to at least be until 11 a.m. We serve lunch early. If we had a brunch on Sunday, we want to exclude that. But for the evening, we can shut the speakers off. I don't want to limit myself on a Sunday. If it's 10 in the morning, we've got music going on, we're having a brunch, that we can't have the downstairs speakers on. Upstairs speakers will certainly be off. But the current ones we have.
Those are gonna only be the west and north outside.
Yes,
Because
yes.
you're eliminating the south.
The whole south side.
Yeah, I don't think so. The existing first floor speakers, wherever they are, I don't think are necessarily relevant. Those, you would be operating those under your entertainment license that already exists. So what you choose, you're offering to remove the 6 that face south towards the Johnson.
Correct, yes.
So we got that as part of this discussion. The other speakers that remain, you can operate them in compliance with your existing entertainment license. So the 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. would apply to the 4 speakers that are above the bar on the roof deck.
Correct.
On Monday through Thursday with pre-recorded music.
Correct.
Okay. On Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you're going to have live music.
Correct.
At the bar level, on the roof. And the live music is from 4 to 8 p.m. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the live music will be played through the amp that the performer brings with them, not through the 4 speakers that are over the bar.
So the performer, what we would do is we purchase our own speaker and amplifier. So when they plug into it, we control the decimal it's set at. So if he wanted to play louder, he cannot. His voice might get louder. So
if I may, live performance would be through house-owned equipment, but it would not be through the 4 installed speakers.
Correct.
And those 4 would be turned off or not in use.
Correct, yes.
So that's 4 to 8, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Is anything in terms of music upstairs happening between 12 and 4 on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday?
Yes, through the
speakers.
So you would want pre-recorded music from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. through the speakers above the bar on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Or if we just had music up until 8 p.m. So Friday or Saturday, depending on the weather, we might not have an entertainer.
No.
So, okay.
You're proposing you would like to have some form of music 12 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay, yes.
But the live music, if it does occur, would be limited to 4 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Yes.
On Friday, Saturday, and Sunday only.
Correct. We would suggest maybe Sunday, if we had maybe maybe if we can start at maybe at 1 o'clock, we'd have a duo playing at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday until 4, then 4 o'clock to 8 would be another.
All right, hold on.
So if that's possible.
Hold on. So do you want to add in on Sunday a second round of live music?
Afternoon.
In the afternoon. We'll have to discuss that with the board. So right now you're proposing for the sake of convenience, let me just say from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m., you could, at some point during that time, you would have a live performer on a Sunday, and then you could have another live performer 4 to 8 p.m.
Yeah, I'll give up the 4 to 8 on a Sunday. So we can keep 12 to 4 with live performers on a Sunday.
All right, and what's happening 4 to 8 on a Sunday?
We would have pre-recorded.
Okay, so I think to simplify this, from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. on any day of the week, you could have pre-recorded music. If the weather was inclement or whatever, you don't have performers booked. You would have the opportunity to have pre-recorded music with the 4 speakers above the bar, 12 to 8, 7 days a week, is what you're currently asking for. And then we're going to have special times when the performers, the live performers. Right, because you want, we'll say 12 to 4 on Sunday, and then 4 to 8 the other days, Saturday or Friday and Saturday.
Correct, yes. I think we'd like to extend it. So the current permit now is 9 p.m. on Fridays, Saturdays. So we get live entertainment or recording music up until 9 p.m. on Friday, Saturday.
No, so we've been discussing 4 to 8 on the upper deck. So the current permit for your existing entertainment license on the lower level,
excuse me.
we're going to leave that alone.
Okay, excuse me. So performance, yes, will be limited to 4 to 8.
And I think what I would like to do is live or pre-recorded also, keep the bar, the roof deck hours. It ends at 8 p.m. every day upstairs.
No music?
Yeah, no, music in total ends at 8 p.m. on the upstairs
deck.
What you do with your existing speakers, if it goes till 9 on your entertainment license, fine. But since we're talking about the upstairs roof deck, I'd like to stop at 8 p.m. for anything having to do with this roof deck. Would that be acceptable?
It would be acceptable.
Okay. Do we think we know what the hours are?
I think that clarifies.
Okay.
If I may, this is Mr. Raynor. When we did the site visit, one of the things that the audio specialist mentioned was the idea of including what he referred to as a brick wall, some piece of audio component that would limit the maximum amount of amplified volume as a function of the system that could be locked out from tampering by employees or musicians who happen to be friendly with the manager and be on site, something along those lines. Are you currently considering a device like that? Or would the expectation be that you would simply be sort of spot checking and monitoring to see if anything is going to change?
No, we would have a mechanism such as what you're speaking about. We've already outsourced a company called Treehouse. They're the ones that recommend that they can modify something, put something there that the volume will stay at whatever it is presently. And we would go forward with that. So, and musicians came in, we'd bring our speaker out, plug into it, and play from there.
And do you have any sort of timeline of what months of the year you wanted to have this music occurring at the roof deck?
Yeah, I would say Memorial Day weekend. And I mean, the weather depending, Columbus Day.
Okay.
Now, this year, you're going to, obviously because of COVID, you're going to try to continue on with the rooftop deck?
No, we already closed it.
So the issue for this year is moved because we've already closed the roof deck.
Yes.
But assuming normal operating conditions, we'd like to have permission for the music at the roof deck from Memorial Day weekend to Columbus.
Day weekend, yes.
Okay? Or Indigenous peoples.
Oh, yes.
Whatever the holiday shall be designated. And you're going to commit to the performer being and your sound equipment located near the stair where we saw it during the site visit.
Correct.
So the performer's not going to be moved closer to the Johnston property.
No.
It's going to always occur at that set location.
Mm-hmm. Correct. In with the two musicians, so there'll never be, even with two musicians, someone playing the drums. It's more acoustical, guitar, saxophone, but it wouldn't be any drum sets, anything that's amplified wouldn't be that's significant.
I'm going to ask the board, what is our feeling on stating certain decibel limits? And I would say that, preface that, while the noise ordinance allows 75 decibels at the property line, this board's job is to determine what constitutes a nuisance. A nuisance could be 75 decibels, it could be something else. The other thing I think we have to look at is, since the applicant is asking for something additional, he wants to ask now for something that wasn't previously approved, so he wants us to give him something. Should he be required to give up something in agreeing to a lower decibel limit than what the ordinance?
I think they did. What were you proposing?
Well, I'm not sure we clarified what the reference was.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, what we're giving up to is we're giving up the 6 speakers downstairs. On the upstairs, I think, Attorney Frost said it correctly, is that it's going to be hard. If they come in and test our music and they're at the Johnson property, it's at 55, it's at 60. If there's a boat operated, I think we should be tied in to, whether we'll try to tie ourselves the best out to 55.
For the music.
For the music. But in a sense where the police show up and the decibel is at 65 and we've got 55, I think that makes it a little tough to gauge where it's coming from.
Well, I think if we fashion this in that the brick wall limiter or whatever this equipment you're going to have, that equipment is set at a point where the music emanating from the equipment is 55 decibels, if that's what you want to agree to, then whatever happens with ambient noise, geese flying over boats, you just have to abide by the existing noise ordinance in the town.
I mean, I'd be okay with, on the safe side, 60 decibels, which is, 5, I think down to 65 and 175, 60 works, that would be.
I think, well,
to be perfectly honest, this is Mr. Reno. I think that we find ourselves in a real compliance nightmare if we try to codify a numeric decibel level in the decision to extend the special use permit. And I think that's true for 2 reasons. One, unless every police officer in the town of Warren carries an index card in their pocket that says exactly what that decibel level is for this particular property, they're then going to be in a situation where they're going to have to remember, if there is a noise complaint, that this particular property is held to a different standard than the rest of the town. I also think the problem is, because of everything that we've seen from the site visit, from the discussions, that number changes depending on where you are. So short of literally painting a pink X on the roof deck somewhere and saying, this is the measurement point that we expect X amount of audio energy, I think we're talking about something that requires more specificity, both in the measurement and the location and the description of what all the parameters of that measurement is, that should necessarily be included in the decision itself. I think the fact that the owner has that benchmark established, they know that in order to be within compliance, they need to go and stand 10 feet in front of the performer and with a spot meter and test that at the beginning of every live music performance. They know that as a way to make sure that they are complying with what we have requested. But I don't necessarily know that it is a valuable effort to codify how they should be policing themselves in the decision. That responsibility simply falls on them. And if having that number and being able to spot measure it with a meter on site is their way of making sure there's always 20 decibels of headroom to allow for a boat passing by or someone starting a motorcycle in the parking lot, I think it's on them to make sure that they never put themselves in a position where the total noise in the area goes above what's allowed for the noise ordinance.
And I certainly agree with your perspective. I think the town council has made a policy decision, and it clearly states that they have consideration for public health, safety, and general welfare, they come up with maximum decibel levels. That was the determination, that's the ordinance. It's probably the easiest to enforce, the poly ordinance. And I recommend staying away from limiting certain locations at 0.65 or 6, etc. I think it would be an enforcement issue, to be very complex, and I just see a lot of liability in the future for the town if, with that piece of property. So I recommend sticking to those ordinances.
Mr. Thibodeau, you have something you want to do?
The best way for us probably to make sure this is working is a sunset clause in like 1 year.
Yes.
That way, everybody can come back. If they've made the neighbors happy, the neighbors aren't going to come back, and we can reevaluate it.
I would agree. If I may, when does your entertainment license come up?
They all expire all entertainment licenses expire at either November or December. They're all up for renewal. So, I mean, at a previous meeting, the applicant did offer that they would be willing to agree to a conditional approval for a period of time to see how that was working. So your approval tonight could be if in fact an entertainment license is renewed or extended by the town council, that their ability to have amplified music on the third level could be limited to 6 months, and then they come back and we see kind of a mid-season check in terms of how that is. But I think to get into limiting decibel levels that are lower than what the zoning ordinance is akin to spot zoning, which we don't want to get into.
So would you be amenable to, if we were to approve something here, that let's say you start on Memorial Day, you have all of June, all of July, test this out, and then in August, you come back and we evaluate whether we should continue to extend that or whether further modifications need to be made?
No, we're okay with that.
I think we can make it work. Let's just give it to all. I think you guys can make it work. I think you can work on your sound deadening up there in general, just to take the edge off. I think you can make the neighbors happy. I think we can make it work. So we should probably tread in that type of a direction. Meet again next August.
Yeah, I would say that this would not expire until the meeting of the zoning board, which occurs in August. So you could continue doing whatever is approved up until the day we have the meeting, and then we would determine at that meeting in August of 2021 whether we approve it for another period of time or if somehow it needs to be modified at that time.
Okay, we'll go with that.
It's the 18th of August, right? So the 18th of August, unless something changes with the schedule, but it will be the 18th or whatever date in August this board meets in 2021. Mr. Holby, is he still on the Zoom or the phone?
I'm here.
Do you have anything else, Barrett?
I don't.
Have you heard the general direction the discussion is taking?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Nystrom, do you have anything else?
No, I don't. I understand the issues with trying to figure out compliance. The tough thing is, when we did the site visit, I'm trying to remember the decibel levels that were set that we used to listen to. I believe it was that at 60, but
I think we had readings in the 50s.
All right. Yeah, but no, I think the way to go in this is, the August 18th review.
Mr. Reno, anything else?
Nope. Not that I can think of.
And Mr. Sylvia, do you want to add any additional comments? Mr. Sylvia? Nothing. Bring it back to the applicant. Do you have anything to say to the board in closing before we entertain some sort of motion?
No, I mean, we appreciate anything, you decide on this. And I think the sunset clause, I would assume that sunset music is off regardless of the 8 o'clock PM. Is that the sunset clause?
But we're talking about in a year, we're gonna review it
Okay,
again.
okay,
That we mean the sunset clause. So we
Oh, okay.
come back. If you're doing a great job, obviously your neighbor's not gonna be here complaining and just trying to work this out. That's
Yeah, no, I think, we're very confident we can control our speakers. There's no question about that. And we believe we can control the live entertainment. If for some reason we can't do it and it's not working out, you can remove the live entertainment. But I think even in itself, the speakers alone, just it makes a difference. When you're sitting out there and you're having a drink, you're eating dinner, you'll stay that extra hour. Just to keep the tables turned. And again, we're very conscious of the Johnson. That's why we eliminate the speakers on the side facing him.
Is that all?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right. If someone would care to make a motion, we can certainly help out verifying the conditions and the parameters that were agreed.
All right, let's see if I can read my own notes. Take a stab at this. This is Mr. Raynone. I will move approval on application 20-35, Wharf Holdings LLC owner and Waterfront Investments LLC, DBA The Wharf applicant. 2015 Water Street plat map number 4, lots number 1 and 3, a request for a special use permit under section 32-51 of the Warren zoning ordinance to modify the special use permit granted by the zoning board June 19, 2019 to allow for amplified music in a waterfront zoning district. In approving this modification to the special use permit, we will note that this new expanded use of amplified and live music on the roof deck will be compatible with the neighboring land use in that there are existing outdoor speakers, so there is currently amplified music outside the building, currently in use as a function of their existing entertainment license, that it will not create, that it is compatible with the comprehensive community plan and that the public welfare and convenience will be served. The governor has set forth the Take It Outside effort as a means of continuing and expanding on live entertainment, hospitality, and restaurant use during this time of necessary COVID restrictions, and in the interest of attempting to maintain the vibrancy of the restaurant scene here in Warren. We believe that this will be a public convenience and that all of the residents and visitors to Warren will be served by this. In discussing that it will not create a nuisance or a hazard in the neighborhood, we will say that the owners have definitely expressed a number of good faith efforts, both in their current actions by closing the restaurant earlier than what is allowed by their restaurant license, and by their intention to use limiting components within their audio system that will put limits on the upper volume that is allowed through the audio system that they are planning on implementing for the upper roof deck. As an extension of that desire to not create a nuisance or hazard in the neighborhood, we will make this approval with the following conditions. And here we go. Live music will be limited to no more than 2 musicians at a time. That live music will be amplified only through house-owned equipment that will be under the control of the restaurant. Live musicians will not be able to bring their own amplified equipment in. That live amplified music will not be played through the 4 speakers mounted over the bar. That live music will be limited to the following hours. And this only applies to the 4 speakers upstairs on the roof deck. That limit will be from noon or 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. any day of the week. As an exception to that time period, live amplified music will be allowed on the roof deck from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays, or from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Sundays. During the time of live music, the pre-recorded amplified music will not be active. We would further restrict that this is going to include the removal of the 6 speakers currently mounted on the lower level of the restaurant, exterior to the restaurant and facing south to the Johnston property. This is further restricted by the fact that the owner will maintain a functional decibel meter on site that can be used for spot checking to ensure that their own in-house audio benchmarks are maintained as a way of ensuring that they are in compliance with the town's previously established noise ordinance. We will say that this approval in general going forward is subject to review whenever the owner's entertainment license is renewed. It will be set as an annual schedule. This music will be allowed from Memorial Day through Columbus Day weekend inclusively. And that with this approval, we will say that it is subject to a 6-month review to be conducted by this zoning board, including public comment at the August zoning meeting scheduled for 2021. In speaking on the record as to why now rather than why not include it with the special use permit approved last year, we have heard testimony that there was a good faith effort to use non-amplified live music on the roof deck, and it was proven that a non-amplified music is not effective and not functional, shall we say. It cannot be heard by the patrons in all corners of that roof deck, and therefore would not function in the way that it was originally intended when the original special use permit was approved last year. Therefore, in this instance, it is a good faith effort to find a way on the part of the owner to both provide the level of music that was originally intended while still trying to be a good neighbor and ensuring that he is not creating a nuisance or a hazard for anyone living in the near proximity to the restaurant.
I would just also add to clarify that Memorial Day weekend shall be defined as including the Friday prior to the Monday holiday, and Columbus Day weekend shall mean the time up to and including the Monday holiday itself, where the music is allowed during the hours and the types of music specified at the upstairs bar area.
Thank you.
Mr. Renaud, I believe that the applicant had asked that holidays be treated similar to weekends in terms of the hours, correct?
Yes, for example, for the 4th of July, if it's on a Tuesday, we could, yes.
So we should end.
Yep, we can include the stipulation that any federal holiday be treated as a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday for purposes of live music entertainment. And I will also note there is a restriction that the live music setup can only be placed directly adjacent to the stairs down to the parking lot level on the roof deck. I think I caught it.
Anyone else have any other conditions or observations? Do I hear a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Mr. Hovey seconds it.
Okay, I will call the board beginning with Mr. Holby.
Mr. Hovey?
Yes.
Mr. Hovey votes yes.
Mr. Thibodeau?
Yes.
Mr. Nystrom?
Yes.
Mr. Rainone?
Yes.
And myself, the acting chair, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Adelman will take his seat as the chair.
No, there's no music here, sir.
No, part of it.
The next application application under new business is application 20-42, 99 Water Street LLC owner, Wonder Corp. Holding LLC applicant, 99 Water Street, plat map 2, lot 2, request for a special use permit under section
32-50 office use and 32-53 retail business use to an office and retail space in the special zoning district.
Excuse me, Mr. Lilly, sorry to have not interrupted you before you went forward with the introduction, but I'd like to make an amendment to our schedule tonight. And if it's okay with the board, I'd like to jump ahead since the Warren Building Code Board of Appeals has.
Mr. Cox would like to speak with respect to application 20-01A, Salem Severio Land Company owner and applicant, 189, 195, and 201 Main Street. Plat map 2, lot 78, 79. Request for an appeal under section 32.5A under 32-6 to authorize and direct the building official to issue a zoning certificate for the above property, acknowledging it is a 12-unit apartment complex. Mr. Cox.
Mr. Chair, just for the board, so we're just going to take an informal comment from Mr. Cox as to what he wants to do with the appeal. After the zoning board closes out today, we will open the appeal and we'll just put it on the record and close that. This is just for Mr. Cox's convenience. The court's convenience, the board's convenience at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, solicitor, very much. It is our request that the appeal be continued 1 month. That is it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And so we'll make a motion at the time. Yes.
Thank you.
And that, Mr. Vice Chair, and when we hear that, we'll be hearing it as the zoning board of appeals, since this is
That's
zoning.
correct. And Bob Moore will also offer some comment in regards to the appeal itself, but that Mr. Cox's formal statement is it for your answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we can take up application 2042. I won't read it again. I know that both the owner of the property, Star Properties, is represented, and Mr. Zing is here as well. And
Attorney Garrity is also here. So who would like to speak first for the applicant?
And just before we start, this is the Vice Chair, Mr. Sylvia just excused himself for a brief interval to deal with a work issue, but he said he will be returning.
Okay. So with respect to this application, who would like to speak first on behalf of the applicant?
I'd like to speak.
Stand up. Susie, if you could just identify yourself, please. Your first name, spell your last name, and your address, please.
Sure. My name is Christopher Zing, Z-I-N-G-G. My current home address, is that what you need?
Yes, please, sir.
Is 5 Crossways in Barrington. I am here representing my ownership in 2 different businesses, which hopes to occupy the space at 99 Water Street. And those are WonderCore, which is the applicant, and my other business, In Your Ear, which is a retail music store. In Your Ear has been a staple of Rhode Island since 1985 and in Warren for over 10 years. And we love Warren and want to stay in Warren, but we are getting to the point where we've outgrown the size of space that we are occupying. And WonderCore is a newish business last couple of years that I established with my partner, David Silva, who is a Warren native and has been involved in several music businesses over the last 20 plus years in Warren, record labels and promotion and marketing. And so our goal is to have a combined use space at the location. And we're very excited about staying in Warren, and we're thrilled when we found this space because it meets our needs size-wise. And my store is basically a destination. As much as I would like to say that people happen upon us, we've established a reputation over the last 30 plus years in Rhode Island, and people drive from all over the state and out of state locations. So we're excited about the new space. And that's basically it. WonderCore is a marketing and experiential company, which we're in the process of issuing a bunch of unusual music. Actually, our first major project is this Friday. We do experiential exhibits. We were in the process of setting up a bunch of those. We have global deals. We're a business that we hope will continue to grow over the years. At this location, before questions are even asked, we are currently 2.5 employees, but we hope to grow it to 5 or 6. And that is it for my little spiel.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Zink. This is the chair. Could you? Oh, yeah, sorry. This is the chair. Mr. Zink, could you describe to us a little bit of what square footage space you're looking to occupy at the property? I know that it seems like you're on the existing building on the water side on the north end of the building. How many square feet are you anticipating?
Yep, no problem. So the space we're looking at is to the right of Anchor Health, which recently opened. It's approximately 4,200 square feet. About 1,500 plus of that would be retail, and the remainder would be office.
Great, thank you. And what are your hours of operation on the retail side?
We have never been open past 6. Whatever the parameters are, I would not imagine ever being open past 8.
Okay. I know that in your former store here on Main Street, you offer music lessons and those sort of later hour services. Is that intended here as well?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand you.
The question was that at your previous location, sir, you had offered music lessons. Is it your intention to offer them here as well?
In reality, we haven't been offering music lessons for a couple of years. And no, we have no intention of doing music lessons.
So it's strictly a retail, like a sale business.
Correct. Yes.
I don't have any other further questions at the time. I'll start with Mr. Thibodeau.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Ms. Nystrom?
No questions at this time.
Ms. Raynon?
I think my initial question is, are the plans included with this packet the correct plans?
This is the chair. No, I discovered that another application, the next 2 applications, the floor plans for that application were stapled to this application in our packets.
We're all on the same page now.
Bear with us, Mr. Zing, there's a clerical stapling error.
It wasn't the clerk.
So,
That makes much more sense now.
you're welcome. So do you have any other questions or any questions at the moment?
No, I don't.
Mr. Ellis?
You may not know this, but what was the number of parking spaces that this business would require so we can check that with our cumulative parking tally to test on state?
Sure. I'll speak to it and then I'll defer to Mr. Garahy to clarify. We would anticipate, based on my business in the past, no more than 10 customers at a time. And as I've estimated, eventually 4 to 5 employees. I believe the allocation already is more than that, but I'll defer to Mr. Garahy.
Mr. Garrett, if you could just identify yourself, please, for the record.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm John Garahy. I'm an attorney with an office at 2088 Broad Street in Cranston, Rhode Island. Represent the owner of the property, 99 Water LLC. Happy to address this. Happy to have this Rhode Island business and this Warren business remaining, and happy to have them here. With respect to parking, So as the applicant indicated, he usually has about 10 parking spaces. Based upon the square footage, the requirement is 22 parking spaces based on the zoning ordinance to allow that. And clearly with the calculations sufficient, plenty of parking spaces still remaining under the calculations provided.
Do you ever hear that, Mr. Ellis? No. Mr. Gary, would you mind repeating that again? We had some audio difficulties and I will.
I'm sorry.
To the board.
I'll do the best I can. I hope people can hear me. Am I speaking loud enough?
Well, maybe yes, maybe no, but whatever you say, I'll repeat.
Okay. The parking requirement under the zoning ordinance for this size and use is 22 parking spaces. Under the zoning ordinance, 17 for the size plus 5 is the way the zoning ordinance characterizes it. And with the parking spaces allocated, there's more than sufficient parking spaces remain for this use and remaining after this use.
Mr. Ellis, did you hear that 22 is the required?
Yes. So for a cumulative total, we can now assign another 22 commercial spaces have been spoken for.
Correct.
That is correct.
Could you by chance tell us how many parking spaces remain for future businesses on this property that haven't been allocated to another use?
So the question, Mr. Gary, and I see Mr. Langlois has his hand up as well as.
I raised my virtual hand. I wasn't sure if that would work.
It did. Would you like to address the remaining parking, sir?
Yep. Okay, can everyone hear me okay?
If you could just identify yourself, sir. And
Sure. My name's Tyler Langlois. I'm an owner with the ownership entity 99 Water LLC. And just to further upon what Attorney Garrahy had mentioned, really, this is something we know has been before the board before, and we've addressed the parking counts for the entire Tourister and 99 Water site. And really, the numbers haven't changed over the years. It's just been, the allocations between commercial and residential. And I know more recently, it was discussed relative to phase 1 when they came before the board for a change of use for some commercial to residential. And at that time, it was confirmed there was enough parking, assuming full occupancy of the whole site and the balance of the remaining commercial space. So really what the Wondercorp proposal is suggesting, their square footage of 4,200 square feet, as John mentioned, under the zoning ordinance accounts for, I believe, 21 parking spaces. And so what we're doing here really is bringing occupancy to a commercial space that's already been permitted under the parking counts for the entire site. And there's still, after Wondercorp, would remain additional unoccupied commercial space, approximately 5,000 square feet within that one-story building on the water. And so in the overall parking counts, we account for that, saying it's got to be a commercial space on the same ratio of parking that John had mentioned, the 250, it's 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet plus 5. And then with Wondercorp coming in and their 21 spaces, I don't have the numbers exactly, I believe it's 22 spaces would still be available or, unallocated at the end, assuming a full build out of commercial.
24, Tyler.
24, I'm sorry, okay. So if it's, to simplify that, assuming all the balance of commercial space is occupied, applying the same ratios per the zoning code, there would still be an additional, and John, if the number is 24, approximately unallocated spaces or excess spaces. So that's really under the zoning ordinance. And then just from a practical sense, as Chris Zing from Wondercorp had mentioned, that space would be, quote, allocated 22, I think it was 21 or 22 spaces. And in reality, he'd be using maybe 10. So from just an anecdotal experience, it works.
So thank you. So the answer is there's 24 unused spaces after we factor in the maximum that should be applied to this application.
Yes.
I don't know if that answered it or not, but I think it's fine. Somewhere we have in our record what Mr. McCoy presented for the entire parcel of land. I think there were 140 or something commercial available at that time. So as long as we document that he is allocating 22 per the code for his business, we can tally that up in future time.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. That's a correct statement. Thank you very much.
I have no idea what he said.
Mr. Gary, he said that you're incredibly smart and he agrees with me.
Larry will get nowhere.
Yeah, I would just like to remind the applicant or the owner of the property that, depending on the use of the zoning ordinance, each use may require different intensities of required parking. So for the remainder of the commercial space, I will not count on using the formula that you just did for just retail and office space, because there might be other uses that might require more parking and quickly, take up the remaining parking spaces. Just point of record.
You ready to hear that, Mr. Gary?
I'm sorry, I
The
didn't
chair
really
said
hear
that
it.
he just wanted to offer you some guidance that depending on what the use is for remaining space may impact what the required amount of parking spaces is. So just to be cautious moving forward that there's not some just uniform template in terms of how this is being calculated.
Thank you. Okay. And I think, Mr. Barrett, you're out there somewhere?
Mr. Holby, do you have any comments? You're on mute. Go ahead, sir.
No comments.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Is there anybody from the public or on the Zoom platform that would like to comment on this application? If so, if you're on Zoom, you can use the raise your hand icon. And I think it's *6 if you're on your phone. I don't see anyone on the phone. Mr. Chairman, I'm not seeing any hands raised or.
Okay, thank you. I'll just close the public comment period and bring it back to the applicant for any closing comments before we bring it back to the board for a motion. Nothing. Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm looking at the decision from August, which I was wanting a very clear answer for tally. And reading, there are 764 total spaces in the project. This is track of 472 for residential, that leaves 292 spaces for commercial. 130 commercial spaces approved to date, which will leave 162 spaces available. That's the last decision in August.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So that would now be 140 available for this 22 zero.
You know, did you know, Mr. Gary?
I'm sorry, I'm having a terrible time hearing.
That has nothing to do with me. But what the solicitor had just given an updated calculation in terms of the available remaining parking spaces, which is 142 after we calculate 140, 140 after the current application, if it was approved. So there's 140 remaining spaces.
That's consistent with my records.
Thank you. Good.
So,
yes, I'll make a motion if we're ready for one here.
yes.
On application number 20-42, 99 Water LLC, the owner, and Wonderfork Holding LLC, the applicant. Property at 99 Water Street, plat map 2, lot 2, requesting a special use permit under sections 3250 office use and 3253 retail business use to an office and retail space in the special zoning district. The specific use that's being requested here is a music related sales and office business. We find that the proposed special use would be compatible with the neighboring land use in that the special zone Tourister Mill area is a mix of a variety of type of retail, personal service businesses, complemented by residential development. So this would certainly fit in with the multi-use principle in this district. Certainly would not create a nuisance or a hazard based on the parking required and the parking available. There would be ample and safe parking to support this business. It is compatible with the comprehensive plan, and that plan speaks to encouraging a variety of mixed uses, including retail, business, office, etc., in the special zone. We feel that the public convenience and welfare would be served by this in that the applicant has an existing presence, an existing business in Warren. He'd like to remain in the town of Warren, and by moving his business to this location, that would allow him to do so.
Any second? Okay.
I can second it.
All right. In favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Mr. Hovey, did you vote?
Yeah, I vote yay.
Okay. Congratulations, Coastal Records.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to combine under new business number 2 and 3, application 20-43, Spencer Morris and Allison Newsom, owners and applicants, 241 Water Street, Plat 4, Lot 45, request for a special use permit under section 3247 to allow mixed-use commercial and residential in the waterfront district, and application 20-44, Spencer Morris and Allison Newsom, owners and applicants, 241 Water Street, Plat 4, Lot 45, request for a variance under section 3278, 32105, and 32140 to allow a mixed with less than mixed use, I would guess that is, with less than required front, side, and rear yard setbacks to exceed the maximum lot coverage and allow less than the required parking in the waterfront district. I would just remind the board that this matter had been, both of these applications had been approved previously by the zoning board. Unfortunately, there was some lack of permit pulling or compliance that required the applicants to come back again to renew the approvals that had been given previously.
I will have to, this is the chair, I will have to recuse myself. I'm in butter to this application.
And Mr. Morris is here to address any questions that they have. So,
Mr. Ellis, I will be acting sheriff for this particular application. Could we just, before we get into it, if we just clarify, is this an extension to the prior approval under the 6 month?
No, I mean, it expired.
So this would be a fresh approval.
That's correct.
Of the same material, essentially.
That's correct.
The board previously. And when was, do we know when that approval was?
Mr. Kamalo, do you have the date of previous approval? 2015.
2015?
I believe. Yeah.
All right, so basically I'll just state that anything previously approved is irrelevant to this application because the board has a different composition and we will hear the matter based on the evidence that's presented tonight and the documents contained in the packet. So Spencer, do you want to come up and introduce yourself so the stenographer?
Take this off?
Yes, please.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Mr. Ellis, Chairman Ellis. Spencer Morris, 18 Coastal, Warren. So just a little bit of background. My wife and I acquired the building in 1994. At the time, it was a warehouse for dire boats. It had been so for many years. They were getting out of the dinghy business. And at that time, with the guidance of the local building officials, we divided the building into 4 commercial units. Offices, my wife's studio is one of the 4 units. 5 years ago, we came before the board to request a conversion of 2 of those units from office use to residential use. We proceeded with permitting and construction on one of them, and completed the project but neglected to get a CO for that occupancy and did not move forward with the second unit. At the time, we had gotten another tenant, commercial tenant, and have had been for 5 years. And now we're moving to proceed with the second unit conversion, so that the net result, we're hoping by the end of, or by early next year, hopefully with our permits and permissions granted, to have 2 residential units and 2 office units in that building. My wife is one of the users, and we have a General's Financials in the front, and the apartment is my mother's residence, so it's currently occupied for that purpose. But we need to get square with the CO on that, and I'd like to move forward with the construction on the second unit.
Okay, this is the acting chair. So Spencer, the unit that was completed, you say your mother is living in?
Yeah, we wanted, one of the reasons for converting it was to provide her with a residence.
So that was completed, but failed to get a CO.
That's right.
On that. She's been living in there since whenever it was completed.
That's correct.
So essentially there's 1 unit built.
Yes, that's correct.
Occupied.
Yep.
So you now want to get permission to legally have 2 residential.
That's correct. Yeah. And all the circumstances are the same as they were 5 years ago.
So just explain, your mother's living in 1 unit.
Mm-hmm.
What would be the intent for the second residential unit?
Well, okay, so it's sort of family matters. My daughter is looking to move back to Rhode Island, and we're looking to provide her with, some support. It makes sense that, we basically use the real estate for that purpose. And frankly, the current market for office space since 2008 has been a little soft. We had a good tenant, but.
So I'm sorry, is there a floor plan showing the, it's the one that was saved?
Yeah, it's the one.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask, was there anything else you wanted to add before I ask?
Just the history of the building, it's kind of interesting. It was originally a single-family home with a fairly large backyard. Around 1900, the French community built a recreational hall, which is the current structure of the building, filling the entire lot. So we do have some very tight restrictions on setbacks and so forth. It went through various uses of both manufacturing and office, and then finally the Diet Boat Company, after the 38 hurricane, moved around and used it for their warehousing. And then we acquired the building. So it's been through a lot of different uses.
And so just to clarify, maybe you said it. So once the 2 units are converted to residential, how many commercial units will still be in the building?
2.
So we'll still have 2 commercial.
Yeah.
And we'll have 2 residential.
Yeah, demising walls will remain as they are on the drawing, as they have been since probably 1998. I think we finished the first phase of construction.
Yeah, so the residential units would be constructed within the footprint of demising walls that are shown.
We're putting that, we would like to put a bathroom in the kitchen in. And that really is the amount of it.
All right. Let's start with Mr. Holby. Holby, you are on mute.
Maybe intentionally.
Mr. Vice Chair, I would continue on with someone else. We could circle back. Mr. Thibodeau?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Mr. Nystrom?
None at this time.
Right, Mr. Rainone?
Just from a clarification standpoint, to make sure that I'm understanding, this is requesting relief from section 32-130, which, if I'm reading this correctly, that's the glossary. So I'm just trying to figure out if...
Just so I clarify that, the requirement is under the definition of mixed use. Mixed use residential, the structure is for both residential and commercial purposes. each of which is totally separate from the other. Mixed-use residential may be considered for the purpose of allowing residential units in a non-residential zone only in a building with commercial use as a sole use on the ground floor. And then if you read his application, he's asking for only residential units must be located above the ground floor and contain a minimum of 600 square feet. So in the definition is the requirement for mixed use in a commercial area.
Gotcha. Thank you, Council. No, I have no
Nothing else? Okay,
Mr. Holby,
Mr. Holby is ready.
Join the party. Mr. Holby,
Nothing else.
nothing else.
Okay, does anyone in the public, in the live audience here or on Zoom have any comment to add?
So the vice chair is asking if anyone that is on Zoom or would like to comment on this application, if you would say so now. I saw somebody take themselves off mute. Is there a comment from somebody on the Zoom platform?
Hi, this is Mark Greenbaum from 81 Baker Street in Warren.
And so, Mr. Goodwin, I know you testified earlier on another matter, but if you would just
Yeah.
your name and address one more time, please. Thank you.
Mark Greenbaum, 81 Baker Street in Warren. I support their effort.
Anything else, sir?
No, that's it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Mr. Vice Chair, I see no one else in the public.
great, we'll close the public comment. Spencer, do you have anything else to add to the discussion?
Not unless there are other questions. I can't think of anything else. It's a pretty simple proposal, I think.
Would someone on the board like to make a motion on this application?
I'll move approval. First on application 20-43, Spencer Morris and Allison Newsom, owners and applicants, 241 Water Street, plat map 4, lot 45. Request for a special use permit under section 32-47 to allow mixed use, commercial and residential in the waterfront district. In approving the special use permit, we will note that it is compatible with the neighboring land use. The request is to convert two currently commercial spaces into residential spaces. This building is located in both the waterfront district and directly adjacent to large quantities of residences. So having additional individuals living in the area will not adversely impact the surrounding areas. For the same reasons, it will not create a nuisance or a hazard in the neighborhood. Having additional residential stock within the town of Warren is compatible with the comprehensive community plan, and likewise, the public convenience and welfare will be served.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. This is Mr. Nystrom.
Okay, I will poll the board. Mr. Holby?
Yay.
Mr. Holby votes yea. Okay, Mr. Thibodeau?
Yes.
Mr. Nystrom?
Yes.
Mr. Rango?
Yes.
And myself, yes.
And for members of the board, I'm remiss that this application did come before the waterfront overlay district. The planning board heard it and supported both applications as well.
Good to know. So
Further to that, I will move approval on application 20-44, Spencer Morris and Allison Newsom, owner and applicants, 241 Water Street, plat map 4, lot 45, request for a variance under sections 32-78, 32-105, and 32-130 to allow mixed use with less than the required front, side, and rear yard setbacks, to exceed the maximum lot coverage and allow less than the required parking in the waterfront district. In approving the variance, we will note that the hardship is due to the unique characteristic of the subject land or structure. It is an existing structure. It takes up the entirety, if not almost the entirety, of the lot that it sits on. This hardship is not due to any prior action of the applicant or a desire to realize greater financial gain. The applicant has a family member living in one of the proposed residences and a family member that hopes to move into the second proposed residence. The granting of this requested variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area in that it is not affecting the outside envelope of the building, will therefore have minimal, if any, impact on the surrounding neighborhood. And the relief granted is the least relief necessary, as there are no proposed changes to any internal or external structure. This is simply the codification of all of the necessary variances, which are just so we can read them into the record. A minimum front yard depth of 4 inches where 15 feet is required. A minimum rear yard depth of 2 foot 6 inches where 20 feet is required. A minimum side yard width of 7 feet where 10 feet is required. And a maximum building lot coverage of 75% where 30% is required. And only one parking space will be proposed or provided for the resulting structure.
Okay, any other conditions? For your second?
Second.
Mr. Holby, second. Mr. Holby, second. All right, Mr. Holby, how do you vote? Mr. Holby, how do you vote?
Yes.
He votes yes. Okay, Mr. Thibodeau?
Yes.
Mr. Nystrom?
Yes.
Mr. Pagano?
Yes.
And myself, I will vote yes myself, so it passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr.
As stated previously, application 20-45 has requested a continuance to the November meeting. I think it's appropriate that there be a motion to continue the application.
I'll move that we continue.
Is that? We just made that announcement to let people know if they were here for the meeting.
We already need a motion.
Did we?
Okay, I think I made it, didn't I?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I just like to hear people talk. Next. Well, no, I'm actually doing better than we usually do. Application 20-46, Wayne and Jensen, owner and applicant, 96 Canary Drive, plat map 15A, lot 185. Request for a variance under section 32-77 to allow a garage to be built with less than the required rear and side yard setback space in the R10 zoning district. I know that Mr. Jensen is here via Zoom.
Yes, I am.
Who are you? Who is this individual? Okay.
No. Don't mess with me. We can continue that one.
This is the chair, so.
Jensen is here. So Jensen, will you just share with the board what your intent here is?
I'm sorry, what is?
Intent.
My intent is to put up a garage. I have a classic car that I've had in my wife calls it a paper garage on the side of my house, which isn't very attractive. And some damage was done in a windstorm where a tree fell down on top of it. I like to tinker with it and do some work on it. In order to be able to put a 2-car garage in the corner at the end of my driveway, I would need a variance of 5 feet front and side and on the west side of the garage. I've designed the garage in a way that I hopefully will not invade on any of my neighbor's privacy. There's no windows on the 2 boundary line sides. The roof line is a little high, but it's built with truss, and there will be no second floor, no storage or anything up there. The only windows will be facing my backyard and then like the 2 garage doors.
Thank you. This is the chair. In looking at the application, when I was on by the site, taking a look at it, I understand this is a relatively small site, and I know that you have a deck on the driveway side, and your plan shows that the proposed location of the garage is in the left-hand rear corner, and that the building to get to it, to access it, car and drive by the existing deck. Yeah. Is that the reason the garage is set so far back to 5 feet of the rear property line?
Yeah.
That is correct.
Says that's correct.
Yeah, okay. Looking at the location of the garage, did you consider any other locations for the garage, and in doing so, considering any modifications to the deck to make the relief that you're asking less
Well, I've considered putting it on the opposite side of the house, attaching it to the house, but that still wouldn't give me a two-car garage with enough area between my property and the property alongside of me, I believe. And I would like to have the garage near where the door is that we get into the house. So my wife would be able to pull into the garage and then just walk in the house without having to walk around the house. As far as the deck, I've not really considered that. We use our deck a lot. We kind of enjoy the size of it.
This is the chair. Is the existing deck, can you describe its relationship to the interior of the dwelling unit? Like, is it off the kitchen? Is it off a main area?
Off the kitchen.
The kitchen. So it's used pretty often in terms of in and out, outside dining, and in close proximity to a busy part of the house.
Correct.
So, and then considering relocating the existing deck, there really isn't, would you say, is there another location that would serve the same purpose? Because I know on the backside you're limited by a bulkhead, it seems.
Yes, I have a bulkhead on the backside of the house, and the backside of the house wouldn't give you any sun during the afternoon and evenings when the sun is out. So that wouldn't be the most ideal.
Yeah. Okay, you've answered my questions concerning the location of the chosen location of the proposed garage. And this is still the chair. It seems like the garage is 24 feet by 26 feet. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And knowing that is probably the minimum size of a two-car garage, that's adequate to house two cars. Being an architect, that's a standard, or on a minimum side of a standard two-car garage.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have any further questions. I'll start with the board member, that's Mr. Holby.
Toby, do you have any questions for the applicant or comments?
I don't really have any questions. No questions, I'm sorry.
Nothing from Mr. Holby.
Thank you. Mr. Thibodeau?
I don't have any questions.
Mr.
May
Knight?
I ask a question?
No, not yet.
Thank you. This is the applicant. I'm looking at one of the drawings of your proposed garage. You may have already answered this, and I apologize if I'm asking this a second time. But is there any way that you could have it situated so that it's not so far up into that corner, cutting into those setbacks?
So you mean moving it closer to the street?
Let me ask you this. Is there a particular reason why you have the proposed garage situated in the area that you do, as opposed to some other part of your yard or your property?
I don't have any other location that I'm aware of in my property. I've looked. I have a shed on the opposite side of the yard. As far as the setback, if I go forward anymore than I am to the street, it'll be very difficult to get into the stall to the right of the garage. Basically, that'll be the stall that I put my car in that I take out on weekends when it's nice, or not an everyday opened and used stall of the garage.
This is the chair. To Mr. Nystrom question, is there a reason that the garage cannot be moved, let's see, east and toward the house, so the entrance, the garage door entrance are facing west? So as the car approaches the garage, the car turns to the right around the existing deck and then enters into the garage from the west.
Well, that would be a possibility, but in order to be able to put my vehicle in the garage, I have a small truck and my wife has a Toyota Highlander. They measure about 12, 13 feet in length. I would probably have to have something like 20 feet from the property line to be able to make the swing to get into the garage. And that'll put the garage pretty much right in the middle of my backyard.
Nothing further from me.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Raynon?
No, I had a similar question, but I think that makes sense. I guess my question, well, one question would be, as far as the standards for variance relief, the standard is the least relief possible. I'm wondering if the garage were to shift, say, 5 feet further, for the sake of argument, behind the existing deck, so 5 feet further to the east, to make that west property line setback 10 feet instead of 5 feet, would it still be possible to make the turn into the front of that driveway around, or into the garage around the corner of the existing deck?
I don't feel that it does. And just to make sure that I was looking at this in the right direction, I staked out my yard with how the garage would fit in that spot, and it would be very difficult. I mean, you would have to drive in, back up, drive in, back up, drive in, back up to use the garage.
I see. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis?
So let me just clarify on the setbacks that the garage is an accessory structure in excess of 120 square feet per 3288C. So the required setbacks in the rear and side yard are only 10 feet. So what he's asking for is relief of 5 feet or 50% of the dimension that's required in both the side and rear. And looking at this, I certainly would think it's reasonable to maintain those 10-foot setbacks and adjust the position of the garage, and that might involve a modification to the deck, that the deck could be cut at an angle or some modification. It's not unprecedented that when a construction project of this nature is done, that some existing structures may have to be altered to accommodate it. So in my view, the least relief necessary would be 0, because I think there is room on the property to maintain the required 10 feet by modifying some elements on the property.
Okay.
And that's not to say that the driveway could be right up to the property line. We're talking about the garage structure itself, I think, could be 10 feet on both sides.
That's a good point. I mean, if that gets tight a little bit for the vehicles to pass through, there is still room to extend the pavement to the west property line.
Yeah, because there's no restriction on setbacks for a driveway. So the driveway could be extended, and maybe it's a combination of widening or repositioning the driveway to what we're calling west here, and or maybe chamfering off the corner of the deck or somehow modifying the deck slightly. There seems to be plenty of square footage here to accommodate the required 10 feet on both sides.
Okay.
I do have some questions regarding the communication we received, but I think I'll hold that until we've heard from the public.
Do you have, Mr. Johnson, do you have any response to Mr. Ellis's comment?
I suppose I would have to look at that and see how that would play in effect. I'm not sure if I'm willing to take down my deck. I don't know that moving the garage over 5 more feet would basically need at least 5 or 6 feet of the deck to be able to make that swing. And the deck is only, I believe, 12 feet off the house.
Mr. Chair, this is Barrett Holby talking.
Demolish just a minute, please. I wasn't suggesting getting rid of the deck. that there may be some modification. You have the driveway shown at a slight angle from the deck already, that maybe just a corner of the deck has to be trimmed back or something to reposition the garage. And maybe the deck gets extended out the back or further in the front or something to make up for the lost square footage. But it certainly seems reasonable for the magnitude of constructing a garage of this size that the construction project might involve some modifications of the existing conditions to achieve that.
Mr. Holby, go ahead.
I was looking at the property and part of it abuts up to the Lifespan Laboratories, and the neighbors have their couple of their houses right behind him to the north. Their properties are pretty close to the property line, and on Fatima Drive, it's like they have almost right up to the property line. I'm not sure it would be out of character to grant the 5-foot setback. I think that in my opinion, it'd probably be okay, but maybe if the board disagrees with that, maybe you could compromise to another 2.5 feet, make it 7 feet something.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So I'd like to move on then to public comment area.
One gentleman here and there's somebody on Zoom too.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go to the participant in the Zoom call first, please.
The member of the public that is on Zoom, if you could unmute yourself. It appears on my screen as Andrew Baum. You tried to speak earlier. If you could unmute yourself and offer whatever comments you'd like on the application. Calling Andrew Baum. There you go.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Just identify
My name is
yourself,
Faith
name and
Baum. I reside at 177 Fatima Drive, directly abutting the Jensens. And I know that my husband, Andrew Baum, has submitted a note of disregard because of some of the situations that this brings up. So for us,
Yeah, ma'am, that has been entered into the record and provided to the members here, correct?
okay, all right. I just know that the 16th was the date for it, and it came a little bit late. Our biggest concern is for the proposed structure, that it's going to negatively affect our water situation. The groundwater situation is the biggest issue that we are going to face. Not only is the 624 square foot concrete pad going to be an issue, the proposed additional 30 feet of driveway will also displace a significant amount of groundwater that because we are situated as we are on the hill, is just a little bit below the Jensen's property. So therefore, because we do not have proper drainage, unfortunately, in the streets, we don't, it goes into our basement, and it's something that we have to pump out on a daily basis as it stands. And Mr. Jensen currently does already have a structure that is the 120 by 120 square feet within 5 feet of our property line, that we also are directly affected from its water runoff that goes into our property. So with this slight hill and how everything kind of flows from the top, with basically over 700 square feet of new water drainage that needs to find somewhere to go, that is what we are concerned with. 5 feet from the property line, if we didn't have this problem, then maybe it wouldn't be as much of an issue, but it proposes a very significant problem for us.
So just to be clear, the issue is stormwater, not groundwater, right?
Groundwater. No, groundwater. And I'm saying from from the drains on his current shed that is coming down from the gutters, we receive extra water on top of that.
Yeah, that's stormwater, and groundwater is water that's coming up from.
I understand that, but the groundwater will be displaced with the pad that is proposed with a 4-foot difference from the ground level down. And that's 624 feet, with a 4-foot depth, on top of having a new pavement driveway that's in excess of 30 feet. Which is where he could find the space to potentially move it a little bit more forward. So that's where we're coming from.
Thank you.
You have a shed abutting his shed, is that correct?
Excuse me?
You have a shed that abuts? his
Yes,
shed?
yep, we do.
Yeah, you do.
Thank you. Going to 3B.
May I respond to that?
Who? Mr. Paul?
Applicant, Mr. Jensen.
Oh, yes, please do.
Go ahead, Mr. Jensen.
So as far as the drainage goes from all of the gutters on my property, they all drain into wells. 2 gutters on my shed go into a small beehive between the house and the shed and drain into there. My sump pump now drains into that area also, because I also have had issues with water in the basement and been trying to do the best to resolve that.
Ms. Conley, do you wish to respond to that? You have to unmute yourself again.
This is Andrew Baum, her husband.
Can you just spell your full name, sir, and address, please?
Andrew, 177 Fatima Drive, Warren, Rhode Island, BAUM.
Thank you.
So, I just feel that the water coming into our yard from such a structure would be a hindrance to my, entertainment in my yard. And also the 5-foot distance would be a little intrusive for privacy for me.
But this has not.
Anything else, sir?
Thank you very much. In terms of stormwater and runoff, I'd like to just remind the bonds that is a building code regulation that the applicant that would be building any structures is required to maintain a stormwater plan and maintain all stormwater on their property to make sure that they don't increase any stormwater runoff to abutting properties or the street. So that's regulated by code for building. So I hope that at least that provision is in place for them to abide by. But we understand that water doesn't move in the most predictable ways, especially underground. So for the record, we did get Andrew Baum's letter. We'll enter it into the record as Exhibit A. And that's dated October 21st, 2020. Thank you. I see that there's someone in the audience that I think wants to speak to this application. So please come forward, state your name and address.
I might have to have you go with a mic because I can't stand.
Okay.
I have to sit in my chair.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
Bob, I can go.
Yeah, David,
Go around the room. Thank you, Rhonda.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'll take the mask off. Good evening, guys.
Good evening. Could you state your name and address?
Yes. I was just going to say I've never been involved in anything like this, but this is the first time. My name's Matt Ryan, Ralph China. I'm known in the local area as Rusty, so they know me as Rusty. The Jensens.
What's your address?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm 94 Canario. I'm to the west.
Okay, thank you.
I'm right next to them. What the Jensens don't understand, I've been there since right after JFK got assassinated. I was a teenager. I was the first one there as a teenager, and I'm the only survivor
in that area of what we used to call Upper Canario. So my family's always lived there. No one else has lived there. The Johnsons are the fourth family to live there. They don't understand. Let me stand up a little bit because I get cramps. When I was a child and I lived there, when I was 15, me and my two brothers used to catch frogs, tadpoles, little water snakes. That was a swamp. Upper Canario from Ridgeway to Stewart Street was a swamp. So I had this one guy I knew, he worked for the town of Warren. His name was Graydon Warren Johnston. Maybe some of you guys know him. He was a low-income or grant building inspector. I have to keep on sitting up and down here. Sure. And he walked me one time from Ridgeway to Stewart Street, and he lived on Stewart Street. And he says, "I'm going to show you something." He said, we stood in front of his house on Stewart Street. He says, "I wanted so bad to put my garage on the right side of the house. I couldn't do it. We dug down, and there's a ledge." He says, "There's a ledge." So eventually, I had to go to the left. I had to put my garage on the left, which I didn't want to do. Because on the right, they would have had a blast. It would have cost too much money, and it wouldn't have worked. It just was not feasible, so he went to the left. And he said, from Stewart Street, Fatima Drive, Canario Drive, Ridgeway Drive, there's a ledge. So he says, the water can't get below the ledge. The water sits there. It sits right there. So I did something very interesting. I wanted a well water. I wanted well water right in that corner where the Johnsons wanted feet, maybe 6 feet away from where they want their garage. I had this guy come over, and he said, "I got to do a water point," because I wanted well water. He said, "I'll do a water point." So I let him do the water point. He comes back to me and says, "There's something very unusual here." He says, "I can put a well, and you're going to get water 8 feet. I said, 8 feet? He says, 8 feet down, you're going to get water because the water's sitting on this ledge. Now, the Johnsons are the fourth family in there. I'm the first. They've never seen what do I say, the swamp. I call it a swamp. There were swamps. And there was people who came down to me when I was down Lower Canario, right at the bottom of Canario, there's a stop sign. And people used to come up by my house and say to me and my father and my brothers, "Hey, we used to go ice skating in your backyard." The four corners of the house where that Andrew guy who was just speaking with you and the Johnsons and all that, the four corners right there was a pond. And people used to say, we used to go to your pond up there go ice skating. And I said, "Wait a minute, where do you live?" "Oh, we live at the bottom of Canario." I said, "You live at the bottom, doesn't water go downhill?" And they said, "Well, we didn't have no ponds at the bottom of Canario. The ponds were on the top of Canario, and we had to come on them." So when the guy told me the water point was 8 feet down, and Graydon Johnston, who was worked for the town, said, "There's a ledge that runs through that whole area from Stewart to Ridgeway. The water has no place to go." Now, I got 2 sub pumps in my west side of my basement. The guy that lived behind me, he used to have the town of Warren come every year. I don't think they do it anymore. It's the fire department. And he used to pump out his whole basement. And I'm just giving you some examples. And when we went to the Cape, my family went to the Cape, my friend said, "Let's go to the Cape." We were only there a few years. And we went for the weekend. We went to Falmouth. We came back. And my younger brother went in the house and he yelled to my dad, "Dad, come here." And our basement was a swimming pool. There was 2 feet of water coming up the first stair, going down the stairs. The whole thing was full of water. And my uncle, who worked for Sutherland on Franklin Street, he was a contractor, told my dad, you know, the town of Warren screwed up. The town of Warren gave Grezio, who was the builder of those 3 streets. Grezio built Ridge Road, Canario, and Falmouth Drive. His name was Grezio. He built those 3 streets. And what he did is he stripped, my uncle said, every single day, at least 25-ton trucks came out of Canario, Richmond, and Fatima, loaded with topsoil. He took 2 feet of topsoil off the top, and he stripped it. And my uncle said, I don't know why the town wanted to do that. Is that legal? And he took the topsoil out of Rhode Island and sold it, because he wasn't originally from Rhode Island. So that whole area is soaking wet. I can't even go in my backyard until almost midsummer without my shoe sticking in the mud. There's nowhere for the water to go. And now we'll get to Johnson. He has not informed anyone, so I guess he figured the letter would be from somewhere. But one day I was backing on my driveway, I saw him, I went over there, and I said, Wayne, your first name, what is this letter about? And he showed me. He says, well, I want to go from Canario Drive all the way back to the white fence, which is the property line of the people you just spoke to. And he wants to go 5 feet from their property line. He says, I want to go 5 feet west to your property line. And I said, you're right on top of me. You're right on top of me. And he said, well, we're going to be here all the time. We're not moving. You know, once we build it, it'll be fine. And I said, I don't think I said to him, but he's the 4th neighbor. I've had 3 neighbors tell me the same thing. We're going to be here forever. Well, those 2 neighbors are long gone. So the last one, Wayne, and his wife, don't know how wet that was. They never saw the snot. They never saw the tadpoles and the frogs and the little snakes might be in the boats. The whole thing is saturated with water, and it has nowhere to go because of the ledge.
Yes, we've heard that.
Okay. So now I've talked to him, and I said, look, you got a big yard in back of your house. You can go straight in and make a right, and you have a big piece of land you can build a 2-car garage. Because we talked about this, and I said, I know a 1-car garage. Everyone who builds a 1-car garage is sorry. They say, we wish you build a 2-car garage. Everybody says that. So I agreed with him about the 2-car garage. But this is the biggest problem, the deck. Let's get to the deck.
Can I interrupt for 1 minute?
No, I'm sorry, yeah.
I think my question to you is whether or not that garage is built in that corner versus in the backyard, the same proposed size, wouldn't it, in your opinion, have the same effect on the groundwater and runoff as it would in either location?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because the way the land goes, Canario is higher than Fatima. Canario has always been higher than Fatima. The water goes like north. So the water is going from south to north. The water never goes anywhere except from south to north.
Mm-hmm.
So where he wants to put 5 feet away, especially my neighbor, more so than me, that water is going to drain somewhere over there into the yard. They're going to have a soaked yard. There's no doubt about it. So I can understand their point. But I want to talk about this. I want to talk about the porch. He told me he was going to build the porch west, coming towards me. And I said to him at that point, and I said it right to him, I hope he's listening to me right now, and I says, you should kitty corner the porch. Don't build it straight out and go straight like this and wrap around the house. I says, you should make a kitty corner because you might need to get in the backyard with something else. But he proposed to me about 7, 8 years ago, he wanted to build a 2-car garage before he built the porch. So I said to him the other day, you're building a garage, after you build the porch, you did it backwards. If you build a attached garage to your house, before you build the porch, you could have built a porch in the backyard and built a attached garage to your house. You would not need a variance. You'd be plenty of room to build a two-car garage right against your house. He said, well, we didn't have the money. So they built the garage, they built the porch first because they didn't have the money for a garage. And now they're stuck. Now he says, well, I can't open the door of the garage door because I got a 12-foot truck. For a minute.
So we're gonna kind of narrow down your comments and your concerns.
Yeah, I understand.
We appreciate the history of the neighborhood and the land and the way the water flows. When and why he built the deck is history that doesn't apply to us.
I understand that.
Testify to that as a finding of fact.
I understand
This
that.
testimony from you.
Yes.
We have an existing deck now.
Yes.
There, and we have a proposed.
But he made the best point of all. See, I asked him, can you modify your deck so you can put your two-car garage where you want it, but you be 10 feet away? I said, I don't mind if you're 10 feet away from me, but 5 feet, you're right on top of me. If you can modify your deck, you could be 10 feet away from the back abutter and the side abutter. If you modify the deck, and then 10 feet would be okay.
So,
we said, no, I can't do that.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just to clarify what I think I'm hearing, what we're seeing on the site plan as the roughly 17-foot by 14-foot deck off the west side of the house, that was built by the current occupants of the house.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the biggest question I said to him is, why didn't you build the garage first so you wouldn't have to have this problem with the deck? Now he has to go around the deck, and he makes it his neighbor's problem.
Understood.
And he's got a 12-foot truck, and that's a neighbor's problem. That's not a neighbor's problem. That's his problem.
Yes, thank you. I think that addresses the point that I had made
Yes.
earlier about the hardship. So I think that speaks to it.
Yes. Okay, just wanted to do another thing. He's making a hardship for his neighbors. I spent 31 years in the military, and I come from Warren. I grew up over on Joe Street. And we had 2 tenement houses. We had a laundromat, and we had there was a JoJo's Cafe. We lived on top of each other. My parents came to South Warren because it's spaced out. There was land in between the side and the back, so we all have a side and back yard. He's going to strip that from me. Because I want to retire and be private in my yard. That's going to be taken away from me if you guys grant him this for 5 feet. And I did say to him, 10 feet, if you can modify your deck, you can put it 10 feet, and you could still do everything you want, or you get back and maybe make the driveway straight and go to the road. No, he's going to have this taken over too. I mean, I don't think it's right.
Which is the point, I think.
Thank you.
Thanks for your service. That's all. Would you like to give Mr. Jensen a chance to respond? Well, I'd like to follow up on the point that I raised that, the 10 feet is what the ordinance requires. Standard is the least amount of relief, and the hardship can't be caused by prior action of the applicant. So I don't think it's at all unreasonable to build the deck with the 10-foot setbacks or build the garage with the 10-foot setbacks as the ordinance specifies. And if that requires modifications to the deck or the driveway or what have you, in order to achieve that, then I think that's a perfectly reasonable outcome.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. So let's put it back to the applicant for a response.
Yes, I do. As far as the drainage goes from any water coming off the roof of the garage, they would also be drained into a dry well. I wouldn't want to make my problem any worse or anybody else's problem any worse than it already is. As far as taken 5 feet off my deck. I suppose that could be an option, but it really hinders the use that we like to have when we want to just sit outside and have our dinner, or sit out on the deck in the sun when we do get sun.
I think to Mr. Ellis's point, Mr. Jensen, is that the fact that you created the deck creates a hardship that you created, and the inconvenience of not having the use of the deck the way you do now to allow you to have the garage is not a standard that the zoning board can allow. So just that's the conversation at the moment.
And I think
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm the solicitor. I just want to advise you that a denial of this application means, if the board does deny it, means that you can't reapply with basically the same application, where something has to be substantially different. Just keep that in mind as you take a pulse in regards to the board and what you think they're going to do. It's definitely your option, but again, I just want to let you know that the denial is preventing you from reapplying for the same application for a period of 1 year.
I would have the option to withdraw the application without prejudice and resubmit that with some of the modifications that have been suggested this evening.
This is the vice chair. I would also,
One or the other. Excuse me, this is the chair. You could withdraw completely or continue and come back to us with a revised plan.
But if he goes back to the full setbacks, he doesn't even have to be in front of the board.
correct, that was the point.
You
If
just
it's
go full.
denied,
So
he doesn't have to do anything. He can
Right.
build it for the ordinance.
let's see, because I have a question regarding lot coverage.
Well, I was coming to that.
So-
Please go ahead.
Mr. Jensen, in your lot coverage calculation, first of all, thank you very much. So we'll close the public comment period now.
Can I say one more thing before we close?
Please,
Okay.
your name again?
My name's Matron, Ralph John, Department of Estate. I've never had no problems with my neighbor, and we're very cordial. And I told him right off, I am not against you having a garage. I am not against you having a garage. But you could modify it, you could take other options, you could build it too long, maybe, and then just go right and to your yard. And this is why I don't want to split my yard up, I want it in the corner, so I'm not splitting the yard in half. So all these problems that are created by 5 foot and drainage and all that is not his neighbor's problem. It's problems he made by building his deck too far west, and now he's having a hard time getting around it. And the 10-foot setback would be fine. The 5 is not feasible. I mean, you're right, it's not good.
Okay.
So I agree, I just want to say what he said, Andrew?
Yes.
Was perfect, because a 10-foot setback, modify his deck, you have everything you want without imposing on his neighbor.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say.
Thank you very much. So we'll close the public comment period and bring it back to the board. And my question to the applicant, in your calculation of lot coverage, did you include the shed?
Do you hear that, Mr. Jensen?
That was included.
It was included, he says.
Was, okay.
What about the deck and the bulkhead?
What's the deck and the bulkhead included in the calculation?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so your total proposed lot coverage is less than the maximum required.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could also add, a comment was made about I wouldn't have to tear the whole deck down. In order to make the deck smaller, I would have to tear it down because it has 2 trusses that run from front to back that the joists run on, and that is within 3 feet of the 5 feet you want me to remove. So that would have to be all taken apart and redesigned and put back together somehow.
Since I started this issue about modifying the deck, how you modify it with your contractor or architect is entirely up to you. Just from the perspective of the board, there's an opportunity to modify it. How that's accomplished is entirely your purview.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much. This is the chair. I'll bring it back to the board and maybe we should go take the straw poll before we vote.
Mr. Jensen, what's going to happen now is that the board is going to take an unofficial temperature reading as to whether or not your application is going to be successful tonight, which should give you some indication as to whether you want to continue your application, withdraw, or consider some of the modifications that Mr. Ellis and others have suggested. So we'll start with Mr. Holby.
My temperature is that if the neighbors are really objecting to it that close, I would suggest changing the deck as Mr. Ellis has proposed, and noting that the garage isn't going to. I don't believe the garage will change the water situation for anybody, because if you move it back 10 feet, the water's still going to come off the garage. Having said that, there are other options as well as attaching the garage to the house or other design elements. I know that's more money, and I don't want to spend anybody else's money, but at this point, I don't think I'm in favor of approving it now. I would suggest taking a continuance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thibodeau?
I would also say that we haven't met the criteria to grant this variance at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Nystrom?
I would concur. It appears that, I don't want to get too in the weeds with the deck, but it really seems like the deck, getting to the standard was a hardship that was created by the applicant that we're now trying to get over. I think at this point a continuance might be good, but also to the applicant, if you're able to move the garage so that you're in compliance with the setbacks, that may be worth looking at a redesign from my perspective, because then you don't really need to be in front of us. So those are my thoughts.
Mr. Raymond?
Yeah, I would agree with everything that's been said. Unfortunately, it's really clear in the standards that we can't consider a hardship that's the result of the applicant's prior action. And if they built the deck, there's nothing we can say about it.
Okay, so then my options are to.
Excuse me.
There's still other board members that have to comment.
I'm sorry.
Next is Mr. Ellis.
So my inclination would be to disapprove or deny this application, and then let the applicant build his garage conforming to the ordinance, because I do not feel the least relief has been met, because the least relief, in my opinion, is 0 due to the fact that he created the hardship if the deck is in fact the hardship. So, and then he wouldn't have to come back to this board, simply deny this, and then he can proceed to build his garage per the standards in the ordinance, unless he wants to come back with some other different design.
And this is the chair from the remaining voice? Oh, Dalton, yeah. But he doesn't vote.
No, but he can.
That is the dilemma.
Vice Chair was saying that.
Okay.
Mr. Jensen, have you heard what your options are?
Yes, I have. I'm just not understanding one thing. So if I was to let this go and you deny, what are the consequences?
You can't reapply for any kind of relief for a period of 1 year. If you were to conform to all the dimensional requirements as Mr. Ellis has laid out, you would not need to come before the zoning board. You could simply submit a site plan and get a building permit. But that's entirely up to you.
Denial is also available at Superior Court, so that's an option too, if they do deny it.
So to be able to go up, get a building permit and not go to the zoning board would be 10 foot off of both sides.
Yes,
that's correct.
And that's all I would need to do.
That's it.
Okay, then I will weigh my options and review everything, but I'll withdraw.
Do you like to continue it or withdraw? You can always, withdraw at the next meeting if you want, the next 30 days to consider it.
Well, in honesty, if I was to continue it to the next meeting, if I was to try to get 2.5 feet with the concerns of my neighbors, I don't know that I would actually get that. So I think I need to figure out whether I can actually build this or what I need to do.
So your request is to withdraw that?
Yes, it is.
That mean without prejudice? Without prejudice, yeah. So is there a motion to withdraw without prejudice?
I'll move that application number 20-46 be allowed to withdraw without prejudice as requested by the applicant.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Holby?
Yes.
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 Do I get to vote on this?
Yeah, we all do.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Okay.
So you understand what your options are and wish you good luck.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate all your time. This has been quite an enlightening experience listening to all this.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry I get a little emotional, but
No.
I've been there. It's my family's home, and I just don't want no one on top of me.
Thank you.
10 feet is fine.
That's why we have this process.
Yes, yes.
So thank you for coming.
10 feet, I was very happy, but 5 feet, no.
Okay, so moving on. Just hang on. So
We need to make a move.
So this is motion to adjourn?
no,
Well, we have to adjourn.
Right. We have two more things ahead of us. So first off, we'd like to adjourn the zoning board of review. So moved.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
the motion is to adjourn the meeting.
The regular meeting.
They left.
Shelby.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
And Chuck,
Yes.
myself, I vote yes.
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 Motion carries to adjourn.
Just let the board know, I will be asking for an executive session next month, the month after. We do have an appeal, it's Superior Court for the Laurel Lane decision, and I think that it'd be beneficial for me in confidence and discuss that appeal.
The next order of business is the Board of.
The Warren Building Code Board of
Yeah, that was that one.
There were two applications on the agenda, as stated previously. Application 2002A has been requested to continue that at the May, and that was approved. The application 20-01A, as the solicitor said, that has been continued. I just want to give some context to the history of this matter, because the town has some exposure under this application. The town has understood that there were 12 units in what was supposed to be a 7-unit approved building for at least the last 15 or 20 years. And at different times, town officials have signed off on the safety of this building. It came to the attention of Mr. Cavallo that in fact, this was only approved to be 7 units. Once we were aware of that, Mr. Cavallo let the property owner know. We've had several meetings over the period of the last 8 or 9 months with assistance from the fire chief and the fire marshal. The property owner has taken significant steps to improve the fire safety of this building. Whether it's 7 units or 12 units, at the end of the day, it needs to be a sprinkler building. Mr. Cox has presented an argument that historically these were 3 separate buildings that have skin on the outside that make it look like one. The town's concerns were several, that we had past officials that allowed this to happen. We had some concerns with the public safety, but we also had concerns that we didn't want to displace residents that were believing they were lawfully living there. So the intention of the town, the fire marshal, the fire chief, and the applicant is for us to find a way forward to make these 12 units legal. That will require a special use permit, will require some variances, and it will require compliance with the fire code, which the applicant has expressed an interest to do all of these things. Unfortunately, at the time that he bought it, His attorney didn't do the proper due diligence. And again, by action or inaction of previous town officials, no one brought this to his attention. So it's the intention of the town to try to, again, as I just said, give the applicant a path forward to bring this in compliance with the fire code, building code, and make it a legal 12-unit building, which is going to take a little bit of effort. But again, the applicant has expressed interest to do that. So we asked Mr. Cox to consider not appealing Mr. Cavallo's decision because he really didn't have any other choice, but to not prolong this on the appeal process, but to constructively work together to find a path forward.
And then if that, should that happen, then they would come before us with, as a legal special use permit to make it legal.
Correct.
And in standing with the zoning ordinance as well as in good compliance with the building. Like
They would need some relief, but
Okay.
they need justification to, under the circumstances, to allow that.
So they would need relief, you're saying both zoning and building relief?
They're going to need, they are going to need variance for respect to parking, and they're going to need a special use permit because of.
Yeah, if there's no section of the building code that they're appealing from, because generally in the past when we have a building code appeal, it's from a certain section of the IDC. It's not
design, it's a decision that the building official made.
So it's a zoning appeal. So I think what comes forward, we should advertise it as a zoning board of appeal, not a building code board of appeal, because they're not.
Correct, and that's just going to be continuing to preserve the right to have that appeal heard by a caucus, very well articulated. We think as the town, this is the best way to legalize the situation over there.
So the application has been continued, but we don't know to what date. Is that correct? Is it open-ended? Because this may take some time.
Well, I think the first step was to not go forward on the appeal. We will sit with Mr. Cox, the attorney, and perhaps at the next zoning meeting or in the December meeting, he will appear for special use permission and variance.
Okay. All right.
He's worked very diligently to bring the fire protection up to a level that the fire chief is very comfortable with at the time.
Very good. And is that the only update on the two continuances?
The other continuance is, the solicitor can speak to it. Mr. Jarvis has retained an attorney. They would like to have a site visit to show what they're doing to mitigate some of the concerns that have been raised. But again, the issue is expansion of what was a non-conforming use beyond what would have been allowed. That's
correct. I think the town's in agreement that is a legally non-conforming use of the property. The question is what are their vested rights, to what capacity, and certainly everybody understands that they expanded. So I propose come up with a plan to show what you believe is your vested rights. And that's where we're at right now. We're having conversations. If we come up with an agreement that the town says, yes, this is your vested rights, this is what you have the right to do, then we won't have to come here. Like he does again, without the appeal on that decision.
I noticed in the application, they cited a lot of evidence, of historical evidence, but there's none presented.
That actually didn't help them.
Okay.
So I was going to say what it was is a non-conforming, and then Google Earth as we went forward. So wow, it got larger.
I was wondering where that evidence, why it wasn't in the packet. So.
That was a sparsely populated area because of the fact that the dump, that's when the town used to actually dump.
It was a
real dump, so there was no nice houses around there or anything like that.
So then, do we need to move and vote on those continuances now that the Board of Appeal is open?
On the first one, we got to do. Then we have to vote on the second one.
Okay. Second being the Union Street, Main Street.
Mr. Cox.
Mr. Cox. The first one.
All right, so I'll move that we continue with application
20-01A.
20-01A to a future time.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Should we poll Mr. Holby?
Mr. Hobie, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Mr. Hobie says emphatically yes.
Okay.
Yes.
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 Okay, great. Motion carries for that continuance. Do I hear a motion to conclude?
So moved.
Second. Board meeting?
So we okay going home?
So moved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
If you try to get this, that way.
No, he said he's in Connecticut.
I saw snow not fall up there.
Good night, Mr. Hobie.